The events took place in the office. The man asked the girl. He wasn't heard just now. He understood everything correctly. At the same time, the girl was lying on the sofa and the man was holding her by force. He pressed her with his whole body and strangled her with his hand behind her neck. Girl, even if you wanted to say something, she wouldn't be able to do it. She just let out some sighs and was silent. And the man asked again if it was really the Duke of Whitlow's flower. She had just proposed to him. Because of the hand that was tightly squeezing the girl's neck, she could not even move. She hardly opened one eye and looked at the man. As expected, this was a mistake. A young man bent over the girl. He had dark, slightly longer hair. And where was the white shirt that was unbuttoned on the chest? The girl had very long white hair. The girl looked into the angry eyes of this man and thought. She escaped from one beast and threw herself into the lair. She mistakenly believed that this cruel, ferocious man could protect her. In appearance, the man was very domineering. He held the girl tightly by the neck and did not even intend to let her go. He had incredible blue eyes, but the girl couldn't just retreat. The man clasped his hands tightly once again. He once again looked the girl straight into the eyes. One got the feeling that he wanted to hear some kind of explanation from her. For some reason, the man called the girl a hothouse flower. He asked again and again if she really didn't understand what she was talking about. But the girl remained silent. She had a long purple dress. The man leaned on the girl with his whole body. The dress rose up and 2 slender legs were visible. He asked the girl if she knew what marriage was, and he ran his finger over the girl's lips. Once again, I looked carefully at the man. She tried to break free and was already lying on her side. The girl spoke very bravely. She must have known all about what married couples do. She has no obligations in marriage. He continued to gently stroke the girl's lips with his finger. She continued to look at the young man and think. She answered him that she knows everything perfectly well. After these words, the young man was a little surprised. The girl took his hand and repeated once again that she knew very well what couples do in marriage. And this is not news to her. She with her fragile hand. She smiled at him and said that they were not married yet. Is not it? And until they get married, they have no right to do anything like that. The young man laughed at that moment. He once again called the girl by the name of Lady Whitlow. Continuing to sit on the sofa, he stood up and grabbed his face with his hand. He either felt ashamed or came to his senses. He looked at the girl through his fingers and shouted for her to leave here immediately. The man got up from the sofa and walked away. And the girl continued to sit on the sofa. If it had happened earlier, it would have trembled and could not have raised its head from shame. But now for her, this is a mere trifle. Alford, a big businessman, promised the Duke of Whitlow the gold mines of Levant in exchange for his daughter, and the Duke intends to give it to Alford in exchange for the mines. With this thought, the girl ran down the corridor. Is this all true? She caught up with the young man in the corridor and asked him, what will happen if he receives another offer? At this moment, the young man looked back. He removed his hand from his face and looked carefully at the girl. He asked Lady Whitlow where her manners had gone. The girl noted that he was the first to bypass them. If he does not forget about politeness, then she will show him due politeness. The girl said that if the young man offered the gold mine of Benot, then the Duke of Whitlow would give it, not Alford, because the Ben-Not mine is much larger than its mines. At this moment, the young man began to think. He looked carefully at the girl and asked if she really considered herself as valuable as the Benot gold mine. Does she really have such a high opinion of herself? The girl asked if the Duke of Whitlow's flower down is better than a gold mine that is about to be completely depleted. And at that moment, the girl forcibly grabbed the young man by the collar of his shirt. She continued her speech. At least this flower, unlike the mine, has not dried up yet. She pulled the young man towards her and looked into his eyes with such tenderness that a shiver ran through the young man's body. Well, how could the girl know about this? After all, such information certainly could not have leaked out anywhere. None of the letters contained the slightest information about this. This youth was the king of the beast people, and the girl knew perfectly well what he had in mind. The man quickly unlocked the railing and leaned very close to the girl. He looked her straight in the eyes. If she doesn't want to fall, I won't have time to grow. Then he advised her to watch her tongue. At this moment, the man started screaming again. He was but girl, I didn't think of giving up. She said that if she went, then his head would fall from his shoulders at the same moment. And she asked the young men again because she was telling the truth. Or maybe she's wrong after all. The girl said that his plan might fail and he might die an unfortunate death. And those beast people whom he lied around him will drag out a miserable existence. The man asked the girl what else she knew that was interesting. But the girl, leaning on the railing, looked straight into the eyes of the young men and did not even think about being afraid. She also knew that after her words he had no choice but to take her wife. The man could not find the right words to answer this girl at that moment. Before him was a daring and mysterious woman. The man couldn't believe it, because the girl was holding up well. She didn't even look scared, but he could end her life in an instant. He called this girl the Duke of Whitlow's fair flower. The man looked at the girl carefully and thought, but her manner of behavior is very difficult to describe in words. She's incredibly good at it. I wonder where she gets her strength. At this moment, the young man pulled away a little from the girl and asked for forgiveness for his behavior. He was very ashamed that he behaved this way. Well, he asked the girl if she could explain why someone like her would ask for the marriage of a beastman, who, according to her own words, would fail and die. What's the point of this marriage then? Why does she need him so much? And at that moment, the girl gained strength and said, her only dream is to escape from the Duke's damned estate, and she can't be there anymore. And today, this is the only chance. The girl said that she was going to give it her all and put all her strength into this with her new greenhouse, which she already loves. She will live, as they say, a carefree life. And she asked the young man what he would say about this. In a previous life, she was married. She suffered more than once from beatings and humiliation from the Duke. He could attack the girl whenever he wanted, and she couldn't do anything about it. All this time she lived in apathy, but one day she had a premonition of death. That day the girl did not make any sound, despite the fact that the Duke's of her soul. She asked herself only one question: why she lived so pitifully and should die just as pitifully. Now her powerless hand did not fall to the floor. As death slowly enveloped her, only one thought came to her mind. She didn't want it just like that. At that moment, a voice asked her if she was really sure of this. The girl seemed to be in some other world. At that moment, her eyes were closed because there was an incredible glow around her. She doesn't remember the time that passed, but the voice said if she doesn't want to end her life like this, then she just needs to live. The events took place in the duchy. The girl sat on the bed thinking. After all, a whole month has already passed since she returned after death. She died at the age of 40. The events of the future flashed through her mind in a wild flash. She remembered the moment when she was getting married, when everything was burning and the soldiers were driving people away. She saw the bloody body of a young man lying in the square. She returned again to the time when she was only 20 years old. Making sure that all this was not a dream, she hastened to pay a visit to Cleveland Green. She didn't want to stay in this house for a second. He never contacted her until today. At that moment, the girl turned her head and looked carefully out the window. At that moment, someone shouted at the door. The voice said to Iris, so that she stops and doesn't waste time. A girl with blonde hair and a blue dress appeared at the door. She looked happy. After all, today was that wonderful day when her future husband would come to the estate. This will be their first meeting. At this moment, Iris couldn't remember who was coming today. She couldn't even remember his name. After thinking a little, the girl said that her future groom's name was Alford. Lady Whitlow's face changed a little. She knew this name very well. At that moment, the girl in the blue dress grabbed Iris by the hair. She told her that first impressions are very important. And why doesn't she now dress up as expected? And with her other hand, she threw the dress right in the girl's face. She said that her mother was a woman of easy virtue, and she had to say thank you that they hid it so carefully, and now at least someone wanted to take her. Shouldn't she take better care of this? Iris looked carefully into the girl's eyes. She said the same thing applies to her father. After all, the Duke is a terrible person. The Duke's daughter was not going to believe it. She opened her eyes wide and looked at Iris. She ran up to the girl again and demanded that she repeat the last words I said. Well, at that moment, the door to the room opened and a maid appeared on the threshold. She turned to the girls. The maid said that Green Earl of Cleveland Green was here, and they need to hurry to meet him properly. And now there was an Alford on the estate. Very much respected Duke Whitlow. Very beautiful, that their Britney is very beautiful. At that moment, the doors opened and a young girl appeared on the threshold. She laughed and said there she was. She heard out of the corner of her ear that Count Green was visiting them. The young man was surprised to see Lady Whitlow in front of him. He looked carefully into her eyes. It seemed to the girls that the Count was coming closer and closer to her. She stood and smiled cheerfully. But at that moment, the young man passed her and moved on. When the girl realized this, she was simply shocked. She quickly looked around. But since this one was found under the protection of the Sacred Kingdom, the Emperor himself cannot treat him with disdain. Even as a count, he has power equivalent to a ducal title. And he approached Iris. He was the most popular man of the present time. The girl also looked carefully into her eyes. The young man gallantly reached out and took the girl's hand. He turned to Lady Whitlow and introduced himself. His name was Caverant Green. At that moment, the young man sat down on his knee and, looking tenderly into her eyes, kissed her hand. At that moment, he asked her whether she would marry him. The girl quickly pulled her hand away. She realized that he had decided to accept her offer. And it was a very wise decision. Everything turned out just as the girl had planned. At that moment, the Duke ran up to him and asked, "What does this all mean?" The young man, slightly tearing himself away from the girl's hand, turned his head and looked at the Duke. The father was very annoyed that it was not his daughter Britney that he liked. But the Count never said anything about Britney. He didn't like this girl at all. Count Green gently hugged the girl around the waist. He said that the person he wants to spend the rest of his life with is Lady Iris. The young man and the girl looked at the Duke attentively. Britney was the most stunned. He didn't even look at the one he was playing. She couldn't believe that she was marrying this girl. The girl was not just upset. She was just furious. Britney grabbed her dress forcefully. It was some kind of nonsense. You wouldn't even dream of something like this, even in your worst nightmare. This toadstool will not dare to accept his offer. Such a question cannot exist. And something needs to be done about this. The father said that this could not be allowed because their eldest daughter had not yet married. But the Count said that there was nothing wrong with that. After all, Count Rodbrin and the Marquis of Fronta, first of all, married off their younger daughters, not their older ones. Even the third and fifth principals of the Gavier Empire married before the Crown Prince. The young man did not see any problem in this. At that moment, he looked carefully into the Duke's eyes. Is it really that the Duke himself is against his decision? He asked the Duke if he really thought that Caverant Green was unworthy to be his son-in-law. No, it wasn't like that. He didn't think so at all. At this moment, Britney was already hysterically screaming the name of Earl Green. She asked him if he remembered how he asked her to dance at the last banquet, but the young man only chuckled at this. Such things amused him greatly. He told Lady Britney that it was most likely her memory that was failing her. The father intervened in the conversation this time too. He asked if it was too rude. After all, that time it was not he who invited him to the dance, but Lady Britney who invited him. Therefore, it cannot be said that this was his initiative. At one time, Earl Green simply agreed out of politeness to the lady. After all, she so desperately wanted to dance with him. Count Green was very sorry that his kind gesture was misinterpreted. The young man said that he was very sorry about this. At that moment, Britney's face turned red. She felt ashamed of these words. She clenched her fist and pressed it to her chest, and there was a pause in the room. Everyone fell silent, and the father looked at the young man and could not understand what was happening. Everything is not going according to plan. However, if their family somehow connects with the Count, great opportunities will open up for them. Therefore, you should not interfere with this. Count Green looked at the girl who was next to him. He asked her what she thought about his proposal. What will she answer? At this moment, the Duke also agreed. He was also interested in what Iris would answer. Everyone was eagerly awaiting her answer. But the girl thought for a second and was silent. At this moment, Earl Green extended his hand to the lady. She looked closely at his hand. I thought for a few more seconds, and she said her answer. She agrees to marry Earl Green. At that moment, she put her hand on the young man's hand. She said she accepted his marriage proposal. At that moment, the girl looked into the young man's eyes and smiled. The only one who almost burst with anger was. She screamed no hysterically and started stamping her feet. Things didn't go the way she wanted. She had such a great plan. She didn't shout to her father to speak. Does it seem to me that they are in too much of a hurry? Still get married. He tried to calm his daughter down and made a gesture. He wanted to silently let his daughter know that there was no need to throw tantrums now. After all, this is inappropriate now. Britney didn't expect this turn of events. She didn't even think that her father would behave like this. She looked at her father in surprise, and the Duke told her to go to her room immediately. And now a horse-drawn carriage was already driving through the forest. Lady Whitlow was also traveling in the carriage. The girl and the boy were sitting opposite each other. The young man sat with his head on his hand. At that moment, the girl asked him a question. How did he find out about today? But the young man did not understand what she wanted to say. The girl said that this was really a coincidence. After all, it was today that Viscount Alford was supposed to come to marry her, so the girl thought that Count Green had just gotten ahead of him. At this time, the girl looked carefully out the window. Once they signed the contract, Bennett's gold mine will rightfully belong to the Duke of Whitlow, and now the contract has already been signed. And therefore, today, Earl Green has every right to take Lady Whitlow with him. Green gently hugged the girl by the shoulders and looked attentively at her eyes. He wanted to be the first to see her reactions to his messages. The girl did not at all expect that he would immediately come with a contract and take her away from this house, but she was not happy about it. The young man looked into the distance attentively and dreamily. Well, he didn't even know what to do next. Loud screams were heard. These screams came from people who were being mocked by the knights. At the same time, the most important man sat and laughed. After a while, his laughter gave way to rage. He did not understand what was happening at this moment. He hired the strongest mercenaries he could find. Someone asked if they were done here. One of the mercenaries said that it seemed so. But these mercenaries were scattered by 3 masked individuals who suddenly appeared. Ask the man to leave this to him. One of the 3 masked individuals whom the man asked to leave with him was, in all likelihood, a woman, and she looked at him sternly. At this time, the man's face became covered with sweat. He didn't understand what was happening. At that moment, the man fell to the ground, and the mask's personality was holding a knife in front of him. The man begged her not to come or get close to him. He asked that there was no need to maim him, but the sword was already right before my eyes. At that moment, a strong scream was heard, and the carriage in which Lady Whitlow and Earl Green were traveling was already approaching the estate. The girl looked out the window and told the young man, because he said that it would take half a day to get to the place. Last time she needed to get here quickly, but this time it's different. And at that moment, the girl looked at the young man with a questioning look. The girl didn't understand why Count Green was looking at her like that. The young man said that she looked too at ease. Lady Whitlow saw and understood what he was driving at. Lady Iris Whitlow literally sold herself. Why is he acting so frivolously? Perhaps she really wanted to escape from the estate. But how does she imagine Earl Green's house? But his house is a completely unsafe, cozy greenhouse. Not knowing when death will come for you is what it means to have a beastman husband. Therefore, the young man said that girls do not need to show off and pretend to be all-knowing. After all, she essentially knows nothing about him. The young man also asked how she could protect herself right now, and he looked carefully into her eyes. The girl looked thoughtfully at the boys and was silent. All she did was smile. Although he is now trying to intimidate her, there was nothing more terrible for her than her home. Even though she told him about the future, she believed that he still didn't trust her at all. The girl asked if it was just her imagination, and he is gladly ready to trust his secret there to his future wife. At that moment, the girl touched his hand and took it to the side. Well, everything was exactly. To believe he needs to see this very thing. And she brought his hand to her face. She really wanted him to touch her. She was very pleased. The young man looked carefully into her eyes. He continued to stroke her face with his hand. At that moment, he sharply pulled the girl's hand. This movement confused her a little. She didn't immediately understand what he wanted to do. Another moment and she was already sitting in his arms. The young man was already very close to the girl. She felt his breath, and with his other hand he held her leg. Neither he nor she were afraid of each other at that moment. They looked carefully into each other's eyes, trying to understand and unravel each other. He was sure that she would not regret it either. The girl continued to sit in his arms and look carefully into his eyes. She looked attentively and defiantly into his eyes. She felt his breath nearby. He was so close. The man's gaze was imperious and at the same time gentle. She didn't plan to go this far. Is this really going to happen right now? But the girl asked to wait and was in no hurry, and the young man asked her to be silent and not say a word. She told him that she knew everything, so he was ready to check it out right now. The girl felt as if her heart was going to jump out of her chest. The girl looked into his eyes in surprise. The young man was completely taken over by passion. He told the girl that he was very worried. He brought his lips to hers and tried to kiss her. At that moment, the coachman called out to the gentleman. He said they were already approaching Dakota. Count Green understood everything. He loosened his embrace and let go of the girl. Iris quickly sat down on the sofa opposite the Count. She was a little worried and tried to calm herself down. The man who was next to her was very passionate. At that moment, the young man asked the girl to look around. She quickly came to her senses and looked out the window. Her expression was surprised. She did not expect to see such a palace in front of her. The young man asked if it looked like the greenhouse she had dreamed of. And now they have already arrived at the estate. Iris was given a certain amount of time to settle down. At that moment, the girl stood and looked out the window. Suddenly, Count Green approached her and asked how she had settled down. And is everything comfortable for her in her room? The young man came up and said that today he and she would sleep in the same room. The girl looked at him silently. She asked what it would also be called. Is it really possible that today will not be the spouses? These words are few. Earl Green, you extended your hand and said that today he had already brought to call Airy. The young man said that she really exceeded all his expectations. He said that today she can address him as Kay. The girl agreed and they shook hands. The girl was a little confused by the room she would have to live in from that day on. She was a little surprised. It was a strange first acquaintance with a sleeping bag. Typically, spouses who have entered into an arranged marriage live in separate rooms. She had this before. But the Count's main condition is living in one room. And in this room, there was one wide bed. While the girl was dreaming and looked around the room, the man quickly grabbed her by the waist and pulled her towards him. He asked her why she was so thoughtful. The girl was stunned by Kay's behavior. The young man said that she showed him that they had forgotten something. Does she really not remember anything that she promised Earl Grey? He pressed her to his chest and looked straight into her eyes. He buried his face in the girl's hair. And Airy asked if he was tired of playing cat and mouse. A very pleasant aroma emanated from the girl's hair. The young man once again tried to remind him that he was not a person, and she knew it very well. And therefore his behavior is slightly different from the behavior of ordinary people. At that moment, the girl pushed him away with her hand and asked him to stop. Count Green did not expect this from the girl at all. He looked at her in surprise. The young man said that she had not yet shown him something. The Count said that he would be afraid of him. Shouldn't she need to get used to him a little? Don't rush things. The young man looked at her silently for several seconds. The young man thought for a few more seconds. The girl never thought that if it weren't for her, she would have to witness the beastman's transformation live. And she looked curiously at the young man. She stepped back a little. After all, from the swirling darkness, the face of a wolf appeared to her. It was simply huge. He stood and looked carefully at the girl's eyes. The girl was a little scared, but she was able to say that she didn't expect him to be so big. Hare asked if he looked sinister. The girl quickly stroked his face and said that everything was not like that at all. He doesn't look the least bit. In fact, Iris said he was very handsome. I didn't know why death was destined for him. What happened that he found himself in such a situation where he was lying covered in blood in the square? Torn skin and the metallic taste of blood. This is what awaits this beautiful creature at the end. And also a man who raised an axe over him. This wolf dedicated his entire life to protecting the sacred. And he lost his life courageously defending his faith and truth. How unfair it was. The girl stroked the wolf and did not understand how this could happen. Favka tried to address the girl by name, but she pulled herself up in her arms and hugged his neck. And the wolf tried to say that the girl would regret this more than once. But she was silent and only squeezed his neck tighter. She said she would never regret it. After all, this is her conscious choice. And she buried her face in the wolf's fur. Opening her eyes from the wolf, she asked again, "Is she telling the truth now?" And Lena will not give up her words after a while. At this moment, the Count again took the form of a man. He turned to his dear wife and said that she was fearless. And at that moment, the girl was in the arms of the Count. The girl's face became very surprised. After all, now a completely naked young man stood in front of her. This really surprised her. The girl felt a strange feeling arise. But this feeling was very pleasant. It was as if my head was spinning and butterflies began to flutter in my body. At that moment, a scream was heard in the estate. This cry was heard throughout the entire area. The scream was so strong that the knights hurried to the Count's room. One of the courtiers quickly opened the door and ran into the room. They were very surprised to see Iris and Earl Green in the room. The courtiers asked the Count what he was doing here. And Kay at that moment was sitting in a chair wrapped in a blanket. His wife was sitting next to him. The young man said that it is not customary to enter the newlyweds' room without knocking. At this moment, one of the guards approached the lady and apologized to her for the rude behavior of their master. The young man said that the lady arrived at the palace just recently. Most likely, she has not yet had time to examine the castle. At the same time, another girl approached Kay. She asked him why he walked naked in front of the girl. But Kay asked her to shut up. The young man said that their master was generally very tactful. If she needs anything, she needs to know that they are always nearby. At this moment, Kay buttons up. At this moment, he looked carefully at his wife. My girlfriend sat and looked at him carefully. At this moment, she also listened carefully to our friend who was telling her something. It was as if she had not heard this young man. Her thoughts were immersed in something else. She put her hand under her chin and smiled sweetly. At this moment, the girl laughed loudly. So far, it turns out it will be more fun here than she actually expected. And this certainly made her happy. One of the men introduced himself and said his name was Nathan. He said he was very good in close combat. The young man also said that if the lady suddenly needs self-defense lessons, she can contact him at any time. The man, who was a little taller, was named Wallace, and the one standing on the left is Eugene. All three men were at the lady's service. No one could have ever imagined that their boss would get married. The men asked the heir to take care of their master. After all, he missed a woman's hand so much. Even if at some point she stops liking him, then the woman should not leave him. Kay intervened in the conversation. He said he wasn't done showing his wife the mansion yet. He asked the men to leave here and not disturb them. The men understood everything and decided not to disturb them anymore. They said goodbye and walked out the door. He saw them off with a stern look. As soon as the young men left the room, he fell onto the sofa. He called these young men little brats, and the girls seemed to get along well with them, and she said everything because they are one pack. People call it family, and animals, as we know, live in packs. And he looked at his wife so tenderly. The girl also looked into the wolf's eyes and once again repeated the word family. It turns out that now they are her family. The girl tried to drive these thoughts away from herself. What is she thinking about? Night has come. Britney was hysterical in the duchy. She screamed no. Hated someone. Is her father really inviting her to just watch this girl marry Count Green? The girl could not bear this. She was not only angry with Iris. She didn't understand how Dad could do this to her. The father was sitting on the chair at his head. The father was silent only because this marriage was very beneficial for their family. After all, thanks to him, they took possession of the Bonata mine, and this is very important for them. And you need to come to terms with this. Moreover, my father hit a substantial jackpot. But his daughter interrupted him. She didn't care at the mine for their family. She kept saying only one thing, that Count Green should be hers only, and she decided that Iris would never take this man away from her. She was even ready to fight her. At this moment, the girl simply hated her sister. At this moment, my mother joined the conversation. Striving to become a countess is a waste of time. The mother said that she had been raising this despicable weed for so many years. I meant the girl Iris. No one could have guessed that it could be so useful. The mother drank tea and thought. It was not in vain. Their daughter had to rise even higher. Katya said that who cares about the count when the crown prince is at stake? Britney just needs to wait a little. At this moment, the girl's eyes sparkled. Does she really have the opportunity to become crown princess? If things go like this, she won't mind Iris taking the count, and she will marry the prince. This news made the girl very happy. But still, resentment towards Iris lurks Britney in the shower, and she decided that then the girl would dance on iron shoes. At that moment, Shaving didn't decide that she just needed to write a letter. After all, only Britney has always been the favorite of life, and not Iris. Britney thought that Iris was more suited to cast-offs and a mop in her hands. The events took place in Greene County. Kay and Ari were sitting at the table. The young woman said that lunch turned into a late dinner. But that was okay. Iris said everything was very tasty. She also said that Kay has a very beautiful mansion. The young man asked if there was a place that his wife liked best. And at that moment, the girl thought. After all, today she looked at all corners of the county. The girl thought, remembering every corner she visited today. And she brought the napkin to her lips and dabbed her lips. The girl couldn't choose just one thing. His house was very beautifully decorated and tasteful. And together they remembered today's walk, when the husband showed his wife the mansion. Around the bend, there was an exit to the banquet hall. When the young man showed his wife the mansion, he held her hand the whole time. He could certainly ask the butler to give her a tour. But for some reason, the young man didn't do that. He decided to give the tour to his wife himself. She didn't even imagine that he would take her around the castle and show her everything perfectly. And again, a strange feeling arose in her soul. She didn't even expect such sincerity that came from it. And she looked at her husband again. The man also noticed her at that moment. Although he looked quite stern and angry, but he was kinder than he seems. And at dinner, the girl thanked that her husband had personally accompanied her. She was very pleased. And before, the girl thought that she felt so strange because of that incident. After he turned into a wolf, and then acquired the image of a man, he was naked in front of her. And this embarrassed her. She saw a strong and pumped-up body, and so she sat and dreamed again. When she remembered him naked, she began to feel somehow strange. At that moment, Kay touched the girl's face. It was very strange that the girl was thanking him. Does she really want to repay the kindness? Then he needs to try hard to live up to the expectations of his dear wife. And he quickly ran his hand through a strand of hair. He said she should change her clothes for this special occasion. The girl became embarrassed and quickly averted her eyes to the side. After thinking for a while, she said timidly that in this house she has nothing to change into. She only had one toilet in that house. The girl quickly stood up, and Kay had a plan in his head. After thinking a little, He said that then she could wear his robe. The girl was very surprised and looked at him carefully. The girl screamed at him not to say anything stupid and began to run away from him. But Kay was serious, and he had already begun to untie his robe. At this moment, he came very close to Ari, and he called her by name. He told her to just let her and quickly took off his robe. The girl saw naked bodies. He put this robe on the girl, but he himself wanted something completely different. He wanted to take it off as quickly as possible. Kay touched the girl's face and said that she was very beautiful. He also called her dear and his wife. She was so beautiful that the young man wanted to eat her all without leaving a trace. He leaned his lips towards her and kissed her. There were only scattered things left in the room, and now they were already lying in bed. They didn't lie in the same bed. Kay admired the sleeping girl. It seemed that she was very tired today. He only managed to kiss her before she fell asleep. The young man at that moment felt like a deception. He moved towards the girl and buried his nose in her hair. Kay got up and sat on the bed. He had a strange feeling. He was always very afraid and ashamed to show his other self to people. But this woman doesn't seem to care. Her only dream is to escape from this damned duchy. And she doesn't care even if her husband is a wolf who takes on the image of a person. Now she is his wife and part of the Green family. Therefore, he wished this flower to bloom peacefully and once again called it his dear. After that, he tenderly kissed the girl. After that, he quickly left the room. As soon as he left the room, someone called out to him. A girl with red hair stood in front of him. This girl's name was Gillet. Kay asked the girl what's wrong. She held a lit candle in her hands. The girl had very beautiful green eyes, and she glanced at Kay, and she looked carefully at his bare chest. At that moment, her lips broke into a smile. She said she wanted to see if there was anything she could do to help him. She held a hot candle in her hands. Morning has come. The sun had already risen high. The girl stood at the window and looked carefully at the street. At this moment, she really wanted to eat sorbet. This, and it would also be great to go for a walk. Well, there was one thing, but she had absolutely no change of clothes, and the maid's dress was taken away. When the girl woke up, she had absolutely nothing to wear. There was only Kay's robe lying on the chair. It was very strange that in her previous life she did not even think about such trifles. Why now does she care so much? At that moment, someone knocked on the room. The girl asked who was there. A voice was heard behind the doors. The young man's voice said it was Wallace, and he wants to introduce her to someone. Iris asked the young man to come in. At that moment, two men appeared on the threshold. One of the men greeted. Unfortunately, he did not immediately recognize her arrival, so he could not introduce himself properly. The young man said that his name is Jamie and he is the butler of Earl Green. The young man bowed gallantly. Put your hand to your heart. He was very glad to meet the lady. Until he assigned maids for her, he asked that her needs be reported to him personally. They sat down at the table and started talking. She asked the butler to address her simply by her first name. He said that he could not do this under any circumstances, and if she's uncomfortable, he won't address her by her title. And he decided to just call her Madam. The girl agreed. Iris's first request was that the butler find suitable clothes for her, and she can't even go for a walk. Jamie said a tailor would be coming this weekend, and then he can sew her new clothes. Well, the girl exclaimed no. She needs clothes that she can wear right now. Got it. The girl remembered one thing. Yesterday she met Nathan. This young man is about the same build as her. The girl asked if she could borrow his clothes for a while. Well, this request was not entirely correct. Even though he and Nathan have the right build, he's a guy and doesn't have clothes for girls. Well, the girl asked the young man to calm down. Everything was okay. She was always called a weed. Only Earl Green first called it a flower. But she doesn't want to become a flower. And she remembered how you asked her about your estate. Does it look like the greenhouse she dreamed of? And the girl decided that she would live the way she wanted. That's why she said that it doesn't matter what she wears. The main thing is that she is comfortable. This time, she will be free. James looked at her in surprise. After that, he smiled a little, and he said that it seemed he would have to rob Nathan's dressing room. The girl quickly thanked him. After that, Jamie got up from his chair and asked if the girl wanted anything else. The girl said that she would also like to take a walk in the wonderful garden at the mansion and taste sorbet. The girl once again addressed the butler by name. She asked him one question. Can she do whatever she wants in this house? Jamie's eyes became surprised. He said that naturally the darlings can do whatever they want in this palace. There are no prohibitions for her within this house. The girl smiled cheerfully and thanked her. And now she went for a walk in the wonderful garden. There were fountains, beautiful paths, and a huge number of flowers. The girl was hosing slowly, and her beauty was simply breathtaking. It was so nice outside. She held a sun umbrella in one hand and an ice cream in the other. Nathan's clothes were a little too big for her, but they were still comfortable. Does she really need a tailor? Or she can just walk around in these clothes? And she came for a walk alone? That's why she didn't have enough hands. My hands were full. And the girl decided that she would leave the umbrella so she could eat ice cream in peace. Well, as soon as the girl wanted to do this, someone's hand took the handle of the umbrella. The girl looked in surprise who approached her. She was very surprised to see her husband in front of her. The girl was surprised and said her husband's name. And my husband asked if she really eats sorbet even before lunch. She asked how Kay knew she was here. Said he met with Jamie. He heard the butler greet her in the morning. The girl remembered Jamie. He was a very polite, handsome blonde. When the girl said this, her husband laughed cheerfully. He asked if she was really talking about Jamie. She said everything correctly, and this young man came to see her in the morning. She asked him to make this sorbet. The young man was surprised whether this young man really decided to fulfill everyone's whims, and he smiled somehow slyly. At this point, Iris asked if she wanted to try the sorbet, and she handed the young man a spoonful of sorbet. And without thinking twice, I tasted a piece. It was very tasty. Well, Kai wanted it instead of a spoon, and his wife fed him sweets from those no less sweet lips, and he moved close to her again. The girl looked the boy in the eyes and thought, is he joking again? Well, at that moment, she also touched his face. At that moment, the spoon fell to the ground. The girl didn't know what to do with him, and this time she pressed her lips to him herself. It was a very sweet kiss. Kay was very surprised that Iris was now taking the initiative towards him. They merged in a kiss. Iris kissed with her eyes closed, and Kay kissed this incredible girl and watched her. Now she knows. Kay also hugged the girl by the neck and did not take his lips off hers. At this moment, everything seemed to freeze around, and so they broke away from each other. The girl asked the guy a question. What sorbet tastes like from her lips? It was very nice. At that moment, the young man saw the clothes the girl was wearing. He didn't think at all that she would wear someone else's clothes. And at that moment, Kay grabbed her head tightly. At this, the girl gasped, and you immediately apologized. She said she needed new clothes. And he ran his hand again. The girl said that as the butler told her, they had already called a tailor. It only takes some time for him to come and take measurements. The girl looked into his eyes, and it seemed to her that he was somehow dissatisfied. She didn't understand what was wrong. Why did she have this feeling? At this point, Kay asked if he could do something for her. The girl thought about it and said that she needed a maid who could help her and teach her etiquette. You said it's not a problem. I won't necessarily find the right maid. He informed the girl that Viscount Alford would soon visit them, and this man will demand an engagement. At that moment, I looked at the girl and turned to her, but she didn't understand what she should do. The young man said that this guy should not come within a mile of her. Maybe he would rip his head off right away. Maybe he will really do this so that Ari will never see him again. But the girl just silently looked into Kay's eyes, and he looked carefully into her eyes. And at that moment, he seemed so sweet to her. The girl immediately looked away from this man. No, he doesn't have to go that far. He just needs to take the Laventan gold mines from this man, that's all. The man was surprised whether he should really take the gold mines. The girl asked to give these mines to her as a wedding gift. He told her that Alford would not give up so easily. The girl was sure that he was probably now at the Whitlow estate, and he made a fuss about Iris and asks him to return her as quickly as possible. Also, her sister Britney will definitely not be able to come to terms with the fact that Iris has become Countess Green. This is a very big blow for her. Surely she is looking for a way to somehow take revenge on her. She writes letters with such anger that while writing them, her pen even breaks. These two simply have no choice but to show up here in the near future. And at that moment, Iris laughed cheerfully. For some reason, she was having a lot of fun at that moment. While the girl was dreaming, Kay interrupted her thoughts. He spoke about a wedding gift. It seemed to him that she understood something wrong. After all, Count Green is absolutely not obliged to give her wedding gifts. He wasn't even going to think about it at all. How can she demand this from him? There was one agreement between this couple. She promised to keep the fact that he was a beastman a secret, and in return, he took her from the Whitlow estate and made her Countess Green. Everything was honest, and now she simply has no right to demand any wedding gifts. The young man asked if this was not the end of the condition, or something changed during the girl's stay in his county. She sat and looked at her husband in surprise. At that moment, she stood up and looked her husband straight in the eyes. She told him that she would never have thought that her future husband would turn out to be such a little thing. These words hurt the young man very much, and he, in a rage, asked her to repeat again what she said. The girl looked at Count Green. She said that she was very surprised to hear this. She didn't expect at all that he was one of those people who couldn't give his wife some kind of golden life. He said that the Green family is a very noble family, and this girl will be respected even though she is not very rich. The girl came even closer to her husband and looked into his eyes. She said that respect alone is not enough for her. She was very close. She said that first there will be a sultry south, then the hard west, and finally a prosperous east. And the girl said that all this should soon fall at her feet. She opened her hand as if dreaming that it would all be in her palm. She will be able to dispose of all this at her own notice. The girl turned her gaze back to her husband. She said that, therefore, if he has money, then why not invest this money in her? These words greatly surprised the young man. He stood and looked at his wife with rounded eyes. How can she talk so boldly? After thinking a little, the young man said that the girl had some simply ridiculous plans. A few seconds passed before the young man hacked contentedly. He said that, however, these absurd ambitions, she was able to touch him to the very heart. And at that moment, he took his wife by the hand. The girl herself did not expect that her husband would say well about this. She just wanted to check what he was like. And he took it, and at that moment agreed. He again turned to his wife and called her Countess Green. He agreed to give her the Laventan gold mines. At that moment, he knelt down and tenderly kissed his wife's hand. Several days passed. The events took place in Greene County. The girl stood and looked at the resumes of candidates for the position of maids. She had 2 resumes and 2 job offers in her hands. Even despite the rush, both candidates were very competent. And now the girls just had to give preference to one of them. Meanwhile, her husband didn't particularly trust her with any work. And today, this turmoil will finally end. And this could not but rejoice. At this moment, a girl with fiery red hair. Iris looked at her carefully, because she had never met her before. Who is she? The girl quickly walked past Iris without even saying hello. The girl was surprised. The red-haired beauty was not very happy to see her. It was clear that the girl was somehow very dismissive of Iris. She didn't even greet her and didn't want to communicate. She had already observed this indicative of a disdainful attitude for several days. Although there are cases when the servants are jealous of the new mistress and cannot accept her for a long time. But to demonstrate it so openly, the girl saw it for the first time. The red-haired girl was the daughter of a viscount, who entered the count's estate as a servant. And Iris was very annoyed by her. Iris looked after the girl for a few more seconds and thought about something of her own. She decided that no matter what, she would bring her down from heaven to earth. At that moment, someone called Iris. It was the butler, and he said that he brought candidates to her. They are waiting for the mistress in the living room. The young man asked if she wanted to meet them right now. Iris said that she would soon come to the living room and meet them. When the lady came into the living room, she saw that the candidates were talking nicely to each other. She realized that the girls knew each other. After all, they had a lot of fun communicating with each other. They confirmed that they have been friends with the Lutek family for a long time. The butler said that Lady Lutek was unmarried and could live on the estate full-time, and Lady Fernie has a child. Therefore, she will have to return home 2 or 3 times a week. Iris said okay. She met the candidates and liked them both. One was more impulsive and the other one is calm. The girls were different. Iris thought they were a suitable match for the role of their maids. She invited the girls to look around the estate before dinner. She quickly stood up from the sofa and said that they should finish this for now. When Iris walked out the door, the maids began heated discussions about her. One of them said that the girl was really very nice, but the second one quickly slapped her on the head. She asked what the countess would think and where she had left her manners. The girl said it wasn't her style. Is she really pretending to be a noble maiden? She also added, what if something happens? The girl quickly lifted her dress where the knife was tied. One of the girls asked if they weren't supposed to think first of all about protecting the countess. The other girl, in my opinion, was very infuriated by this. The events took place in the Duchy of Whitlow, and now Alford responded to Britney's letter. First of all, he thanked her for her letter. From now on, she can call him Alford. And the man laughed. Britney was a little upset. After all, she invited him here to help her kick Iris out of Green's house. And this is not to pass with her. Britney grabbed her head. What happened because of this Iris? Everything did not go as she had previously planned. At that moment, a maid entered Britney's room. She turned to the lady and said that Viscount Hutchess was waiting for her in the living room. The girl hissed angrily like a snake that she knew without her. She also asked the maid to shut up. She clenched her fists and thought that this couldn't go on any longer. And it's worth taking decisive action. When Britney came out to Viscount Hutchess, she noticed that at that moment he was already hugging the maid. Despite the fact that Britney had already arrived in the living room, he did not think about stopping and continued attentively. As soon as he saw Brit, he greeted her cheerfully. He said that he was already tired of waiting for her. The maid whom he pestered dodged and tried to escape from him. The man said that, in my opinion, this is simply impossible. From his point of view, they don't have a single chance to get her back. Britney looked at this chicken-brained bastard. She decided that he would get what he deserved, and the girl began her conversation. She said she sees him keep coming to their house, and this apparently means only one thing. He is very upset Ken that their Iris was taken away. The girl asked if it would be better to return her as soon as possible. She also asked the Viscount what he thought about this. He said angrily that it was really possible to do this. In my opinion, they don't have a single chance at this. Brinty gasped, and she didn't understand why this man was so pessimistic. She quickly put her finger to her lips. Most likely some kind of plan arose in her head. She asked the Viscount if he didn't know why men were crazy about her. The girl is completely clean and untouched by the hands of men, like a flower in the middle of a lake that wasn't even touched by someone else's breath. But what if she was passionately in love with someone? And this led to the deprivation of chastity. The girl asked if Count Green could endure such humiliation. The Viscount shouted, "Who can believe this story?" Britney had a plan in her head. She asked him not to worry about it. She is ready to do everything herself. The maid was combing Iris's hair. She had them so long that she couldn't handle it herself. The maid laughed and said to her mistress, "And I didn't expect that the lady would treat Eruela so favorably." Iris said that she feels like a person who has everything written all over her face. You can't hide anything from the maids even if you really want to. Christina said that Arella would be delighted if she heard this in person. Several days have passed since Iris's maids arrived. Eruela and Christina adapt successfully. Iris's relationship with them is built like clockwork, without unnecessary awkwardness. Yet one problem remains. An evil voice was heard behind the doors. It was one of the maids shouting. She asked Lady Gillet why she was doing this. Iris and Christina listened to their conversation. The girl screamed that last time she did the same thing. How long will this continue? After all, the girl couldn't do it anymore. Christina asked the lady for permission to go and intervene in their conversation. She was very worried about her friend. The maid quickly ran out the door and slammed it behind her. Iris exhaled and ran her hand over her forehead. This continued every day. But this was not Eruela's fault. Conflicts constantly arose between Gillet, who performed the duties of the mistress of the house as Earl Green's personal maid, and the new maids. Every day, everything became more and more neglected. At that moment, Eruela entered the room. She really didn't understand it. The girl still wanted to say something, but Christina made it clear to her to remain silent. The girl screamed. Having calmed down a little, the girl said that she would like to say something, her assignment, but then she and Lady Gillet quarreled. Of course, she did everything, but she was so annoyed that it was the red-haired girl who was constantly getting into her way. Iris said that she understood her, not that her maid is having a hard time at all. The girl was surprised to hear these words. She didn't expect Iris to react like that. Iris asked that's all she wanted to tell her. The maid said that not everything. Gillette said she did all this work herself, so she knew better how to do it right. And if they need help or advice, we should turn only to her and not to the Countess. Christina was also outraged. What does this girl allow herself? I also thought about Rice. The impudence of this girl was simply off the charts. Well, that was a useful suggestion. And the maids looked at the Countess in surprise. What was she up to? Iris smiled and said that she just needed another maid. And everything works out as well as possible. Don't they see it themselves? Lady Gillette was sitting on the sofa in the living room. At that moment, the butler approached her and said that Countess Green was calling her immediately. The girl thought why she called her. What does she want to tell her? The girl came into the living room and constantly looked at her watch. She had been waiting for the Countess for 30 minutes. But all this time, the girl asked herself one question. What reasons could this woman have for meeting her? At that moment, the doors clicked. Lady Gillet perked up. Iris entered the room. She said that she was really looking forward to it. Iris looked closely at Lady Gillet. This look seemed to be appraising. The Countess thought a little and said that, judging by everything about Marga's family, there is not enough money for the girl's education. Gillet was indignant. What does she mean by this? The girl's gaze became stern. She quickly ran up to the Countess and bent down in front of her. The Countess said that if she does not show due politeness when meeting her hostess, that's why she thought that her education was not paid attention to. And the Countess asked if she was mistaken. At that moment, she put her hand to her lips and smiled. Gillette Murdy being the daughter of Vicomte Tamerga, she became Count Green's maid and lives on his family estate. Daughters of Viscounts rarely become maids of counts, but there is no need to look for the reason for her position. The girl often watched Count Green. She practically followed his every move. Who he met with, overheard what he was talking about. Her target lay on the surface. I guessed what this girl was hoping for, and why she was behaving so recklessly. She is good with herself. That's why she is so confident in herself. She was always so dismissive. But if she were in her place, Iris asked the girl to sit on the sofa, and if Iris were in her place, she would apparently behave completely differently. She would be most polite to the mistress in order to lull her vigilance and get close to Kay behind her back. It's much easier this way. Gillet did not hide her anger. The girl did not like that the mistress forced her to sit and lie down. He pretends to be nobility when the countess, with whom he didn't even have a wedding, is at an hour's notice. What a fool she is. And at that moment, the countess stunned the girl with her phrase, "From today, she will become her maid." Gillette didn't understand how to understand this. She jumped up on the sofa. She could not even imagine that the countess would tell her this. But why should she be a maid? She is the count's personal maid. Iris asked Gillet to sit down. Whoever she was, from this moment on, she will no longer exist. Because now she will be her maid. Gillet thought this was nonsense. Does she really think that their Murdy family are all servants of all sorts of countesses? Iris said she didn't see any difference. She serves the count or the countess. They are a couple, which means they are one. Gillette said she knows. They have a marriage of convenience. Iris grinned. Whether it is an arranged marriage or a love marriage, she must understand that marriage is marriage. And the countess asked if she really needed to explain such simple things to her maid. The countess said that she hoped that she was a grown girl and understood everything. And now the countess is a little disappointed. Iris said that from now on she will gradually learn everything. But the girl shouted that she had had enough. She also does not intend to tolerate such rudeness. The girl quickly turned around and ran out of the room. Iris didn't expect this behavior. Does she really dare to turn her back on the hostess? The girl ran along the corridor and thought that the count would never give her to this woman. She calmed herself down all the time. She needs to be calm. She is also very beautiful, and at home they also called her a flower. Besides, she is the only woman in this house who can afford to enter his office. Gillette stopped near the count's office and knocked on the door. The girl simply dreamed that now she would give Iris a good push and break her. She smiled and told the count that Gillet should come to him. She said that she wanted to tell him something important. But Graf said that he is very busy now. He has a lot of work to do. The girl also said that she had a very urgent matter. When he dialed again, he said he was busy. At that moment, the countess approached the girl from behind. She asked her if the count wouldn't let her into the office. Iris now walked up to the office and knocked lightly. She said it was her. Gillet hissed and said that the count was now busy with work. But at that moment, the door creaked. A happy Kay looked out of the office. Gillet was disappointed. The count asked if his wife had really come to show him in a new dress. She said that it's not quite like that, but for that matter, the girl asked how she looked in this dress. So good that he simply fell in love with her. But suddenly the game asked her why she came to him. He kissed a strand of her hair. The girl seemed to remember. She told the count that it would be nice if Lady Gillet became her maid. The countess said that 2 maids were not enough for her. Gillette tried to say something to the count, but he immediately replied that he would do as Airy wishes. He had nothing against it. It was morning outside, and Iris and the maid went for a walk in the garden. The maid said she felt fine, and I had a lot of rest that night. The maid said thanks to Iris. She finally got rid of this annoying fly, and now the girls will no longer have to listen to any rude statements. Iris was glad that she saved her from unnecessary worries. The girl said that it was the best that could have happened, but she couldn't even imagine for us. Of course, it cannot be said that now they are on good terms with her. When the countess and the maid were talking, a red-haired beauty appeared on their horizon, and they both seemed to twitch in surprise. The girl appeared in front of them like a ghost. At that moment, Gillet approached them and curtsied, crouching and bowing. A week has already passed since this girl became the mistress's servant, and Iris had to say that she was more obedient than she expected. But the relationship between her maids only worsened. Although she was obedient, she was still not respectful with the other maids. She openly demonstrated to the maids her superiority over them. She looked down at them, proudly straightening her shoulders. When Iris suddenly approached, the girl quickly turned around and walked away. She turned around and simply left. But the maid continued to shout to her, so that everyone can just look at her. She supposedly considers herself so important to be in the company of ordinary maids. The maid was more than sure that she was talking to herself about maids, as well as all sorts of nasty things. Iris tried to calm the maid. She said Gillet didn't seem like the type of person who would do something like that for no reason. She seemed to be trying to reconcile the maids with each other. She wasn't very good at it. No one even imagined what was on this girl's mind right now. At this time in the county, the maids were discussing one point. The countess doesn't have a wedding ring on her finger. Therefore, it is as if she is not yet a real countess. After all, there was no real wedding. One of the maids confirmed that the countess had no jewelry on her hands at all. Are the rumors really true that this is a marriage of convenience? These rumors were spread in the county by Lady Gillette. Since the marriage is purely formal, the magnificent celebration and other tinsel were simply missed. And if this girl serves not only the count but also the countess, then it is unlikely that she would lie to everyone. But this was somehow really rude on the part of the count. One of the girls said that when she worked in another mansion, a wedding ceremony was held there, despite the fact that the marriage was also an arranged marriage. Everything was according to all the rules. Who would have thought that Gillet is simply a treasure trove of information? Everyone was wondering what other news she would tell them. Someone approached the talking maids. Mom said that they had nothing else to do, waste time chatting. It was the butler. The maids immediately felt guilty and quickly apologized to him. But the butler, out of the corner of his ear, heard the girls' conversation and watched them carefully. The butler walked along the corridor and thought that the maids were discussing the count and his wife more and more. And their stories are one more beautiful than the other. And when the butler told the countess about this, she asked him to forget about it. She also had a lot of other things to do. Since Iris said so, she will ignore it for now. But what is she thinking about? Then the butler approached the count and also wanted to tell him something. Kay called out to him. He asked the butler if he was going to the countess now. The butler confirmed and said that the countess asked him for something. And in his hands he held rolls of paper. At that moment, Kay snatched the packages from the butler's hands. He said that he would take it to her himself. And he can be free. This behavior greatly surprised the butler. He didn't expect the count to do this. The young man stood confused in the corridor, and Kay was already entering the room. He entered the room and turned to his wife. At that moment, the girl was sitting and reading some book. The girl quickly put the book on the table and got up from the table. She was very surprised to see her husband here. The count asked if she was really resting here. So she's not busy at all today. The girl said that she was not entirely free today. She also asked her husband a question about what brought him here. Kay said that he also had no free time for a very long time, and his wife was also constantly busy. Kay said that he took everything that Jamie had so that he would have a reason to look at her, and he put a stack of papers on the table. Iris just laughed. Kay asked Iris. She had already examined the entire mansion during this time. The girl said no. She hasn't had time to watch everything yet. Then the count had a great idea, and he smiled sweetly. At that moment, he took the girl by the shoulders and said that they could do this together. The girl just looked questioningly into his eyes. What was he up to? Holding the countess tightly by the shoulders, he invited her to go and examine, and so they walked down the corridor holding hands. Kay said that Jamie reported to him that they had a naughty dog that showed its teeth. To this, Iris replied that the count himself was apparently to blame for this. After all, he raised her poorly. Kay asked again if it was really his fault. They went down the stairs and Kay led the girl by the hand. Yes, it was specifically about Gillet, because this girl had been under his wing for a long time. Kay was very surprised. Is it really about his maid? He asked his wife to wait. This couldn't happen. Kay hugged Iris even tighter and said directly in her ear if she thought that Gillette warmed his bed. Is this really why Iris has been avoiding him lately? Iris told Kay that he was too close. The count didn't think there was anything wrong with that. After all, they are husband and wife, so they can be close. He turned to his wife again and looked at this beauty. He gently took her hand and told her to remember one important thing, that no one but her is unworthy of his closeness, and she is the only one who can touch him. Iris asked why he allowed Gillette to feel so much like his. Kay kissed Iris and whispered to her that the Murdy family was very useful to him, but at that moment Iris asked the count to get rid of the maid. After all, she is useless. Kay said that he would do whatever she asked him to do, and there is no problem with this. Everything will be done. Kay said that in exchange for this spoiled dog, she should allow him to tell her one secret. Iris was surprised what secret he wanted to tell her now. Kay asked the countess to follow him, and they walked between the trees. They walked for a very long time, and the countess asked how long they still had to walk. Kay has already arrived. They approached some place, and the count said that this was the place where he wanted to bring her. The girl looked carefully. Kay said they were there. They found themselves near a high tower that had good grapes. Instead, of course, it was creepy, but the young man said that there was something very valuable in him. The two of them stood in front of the gate. Kay asked to wait a minute, and at that moment he took the form of a wolf. Raising his clawed paw, he pushed the door with it. At that moment, the wolf said that this door could only be opened with his paw. The girl stood behind the wolf and carefully watched what would happen behind the door. It was a place where sacred religions were kept. Nowadays, when magic is gradually disappearing, hiring a wizard is like catching a star from the sky. Prices for magical items are sky high, and there is no limit to their growth. The wolf asked the girl to follow him and watch where she stepped. Relics are endowed with special powers, and the guardians of these relics who are able to use them are respected by everyone. At that moment, Iris saw something and gasped in surprise. Finally, she saw the sacred relics. In front of her, under glass, lay a sword, a staff, a cup, and a cloak. The wolf asked not to touch them under any circumstances, because this is something that is dangerous for ordinary people to even look at. And the wolf looked carefully at the girl with his blue eyes. After all, a person without special abilities can lose his life just by touching relics. It's no secret that there were cases when death was the best outcome. The girl looked at the religions and was silent. The books contained records of terrible misfortunes that happened to those who simply stood next to the relics. And Iris imagined how the blood was flying from the cup. The wolf continued his story. He said that there was a belief that long ago, people called relic spellcasters knew how to harness their power. Iris asked if there are such people now. He said he didn't know for sure. Perhaps they exist, but it is unlikely that any of them will dare to try. After all, if something goes wrong, the soul may be locked in the body. The person will remain conscious, but will lose the ability to move. What lies here is still relatively safe. The first relic was a golden cup from which grain endlessly poured out. The second relic was the sword of death, which heals the wounded and sick if stabbed directly into the heart. The third relic is the rod of the wild, which is capable of controlling beasts. There was also an invisibility cloak. If you put it on, the human body becomes transparent, and the person becomes invisible. Suddenly, the wolf ears heard something, and they turned towards the noise. The wolf looked up and addressed Airy. The girl also looked up. The young man said that it seemed that her long-awaited guest had arrived in their county. Indeed, a carriage stopped on the territory of the county, and the man in boots slowly walked out of the carriage. It was none other than the Viscount, and from his appearance one could understand that he would act decisively. The maids were already discussing the new gossip with interest. Was it really on the shore of the lake that their first kiss happened? But how can this be? Is that really true? The man told the maids new stories. He said that he still remembers how her eyelashes gave birth at that moment. She was so beautiful and tender that he decided, and he touched his head with his hand as if he was thinking. The man said that he decided then that he only needed one iris. The maids were surprised it sounded so romantic, and the butler watched them carefully. The man said that Iris was also not indifferent to him. The palace was someone who really didn't like this guy, and he thought he was just some kind of crazy person. His words should not be taken as truth. After thinking a little, Alford, this information is enough for the maids for now. Now they have time to discuss and talk about everything. I watched them. He wondered if he said everything correctly. It was such a banal story. He couldn't believe it himself that it worked, and the maid quickly began to spread gossip and discuss it. At that moment, one of the maids shouted that the Count was returning, and they need to hurry. At that moment, Kay entered the room. The butler quickly greeted Mr. Welcome back, and now the Count and Alford met their gazes. The Count said that not much time had passed since someone had visited him, and it was true. Kay said he was very sorry that all his guests had to pay for their lies and dirty stories. At this moment, he looked carefully at his guest. At this point, Alford began to become noticeably nervous. He began to speak in some fragments of phrases. He started talking about himself, about Iris, about them. Kay sat with his hands in his pocket. Well, I was waiting attentively for the speech. At this moment, the Viscount began to tremble. He tried to calm himself, but his hands in his lap continued to shake. Kay asked if he really needed something from his wife. The young man felt calm. He closed his eyes and said that he also had one thing for him. He asked for the mines, which he wanted to sell to the Duke. Now sell them to him. Alford was seriously surprised. How dare he say that to him? This is simply impossible. Alford started yelling across the room. At that moment, Kay realized that he needed to set a decent price. He is ready to buy them at 10% below market value, and this is a very generous offer on his part. The Viscount shouted no. He stood his ground. Kay looked at him carefully. Alford said he had nothing to do other than the deal. Alford was shaking with anger. How dare he? He called Kay a bastard. After all, Iris is his woman, even though he is a count. Alfred asked how old Kay was. It was clear that he was younger than the Viscount. and he had absolutely no respect for elders. The Viscount asked that since the young man had a higher title, was he really allowed to do everything? Kay remembered Iris. He said that he tried everything to give her a wedding gift, but all his attempts were unsuccessful, and at that moment he grabbed the Viscount by the chest. The Viscount shouted that he would not leave this like this. Iris will not be happy with such a robber and boor, and he will make every effort to take the girl from this house. The Viscount said that the Count would torment her with his terrible character. Alford wanted to make this girl happy in every way possible, but suddenly the Count appeared and ruined everything. Kay said he thought it was time to change the situation to continue the conversation. Femcant began to ask him to let him go. He took his dirty hands, and now they were already in prison. Kay took out her knife and tested its sharpness. He asked the Viscount if he really thought that someone would dare point a finger at him if, for example, he did not have a hand. The Viscount was very frightened, and the Count said that he just wanted to buy the mines at a good price. But at that moment, he began to say inadmissible nonsense. The game doesn't want to forgive him for this. Iris said she was happy next to him, that she feels free. He would never resort to violence. And at that moment, the Count swung his sword. The Viscount said that he was not going to keep his mouth shut. He was not ready to sell him anything, and after he gets out of here, he will file an official complaint. Not only did he forcibly take away his bride, but he also humiliated him, mocked him, and put him in prison. And he allows himself all this because he is the keeper of the relics. Kay said that he was really annoyed by his chatter. Does he really believe that the Count will allow him to get out of his mansion in one piece and file a complaint? Now the Viscount began to rethink his words spoken to the Count. Perhaps he should have kept quiet for a bit. And at that moment, steps were heard. Several people were approaching them. At this moment, the Viscount began to shake with horror. He saw the people who were in front of him. These people were familiar to him. He remembered how they scattered all his mercenaries in the forest. Kay wished them good conversations. He said that his subordinates are more sociable than him. The Viscount should not approach him. He asked them not to offend him. And then a terrible scream was heard. It was night outside. The full moon rolled into the sky. The events took place in Green County. The butler told Iris that the Viscount would sell the gold mines to the master. The girl said okay. She hoped the butler would take care of the paperwork. The girl looked into her cup of tea. She could never believe that she would succeed, just to do something for her that she asked him to do. Iris asked the wolf, will he be able to take away the gold mines from Viscount Hutchison without her? She probably shouldn't have provoked her husband like that. But in any case, a start was made, and the Countess was incredibly happy about this. Because the gold mines were depleted, the Viscount wanted to make a deal. But the depletion of mines does not always mean the disappearance of their value. In the future, the Duke of Whitlow was able to increase his power and wealth thanks to what was hidden deep in the depths. Iris didn't want to let the Viscount have it, and she turned to the butler Jamie. She had one more request for him. Jamie was, as always, at the lady's service. The girl said she just needed to find someone. Jamie clarified that she would need to find a person. Yes, the Duchess needs to find a man, and he used to work for the Duke of Whitlow. But he was expelled from the estate, so most likely he is now on the run. It was in the best interests of Green County, so she hoped Jamie could find him. He will have to make every effort to find it. The girl said that's enough for today, and she said Jamie could be free today. When Gillet walked a little closer to the maids, she inadvertently overheard their conversation. I was a girl who was focused. After all, they were talking about what the Viscount said. Nobody could have thought of it. Did they really have an affair? This information interested Gillet very much, and she covered her face with a fan with a smile. It was thanks to this man that she had a chance to return the Count. There was nothing more reliable. After all, rumors quickly spread throughout the county. At first, only the maids discussed the latest information, and then this information spread throughout the county, and even passers-by were already discussing it. After this, the information leaked to secular circles. Everyone was surprised whether the conversation was really about the same flower of the Duke of Whitlow, and how could this be the only way to do it? This act was vile, and worse than the good old defamatory rumors. There was a conversation in the room. One girl told another that the other day she heard a strange rumor. This story was truly strange. It turns out that Countess Green was having an affair. Has this girl gone crazy? But how could she do this to the Count? One of those present in the room was Earl Green's sister, and I really didn't like this information. At that moment, her friend burst into Britney's room. She asked her if she had read the latest news release. She turned around and said that she had not read the latest newscast. The girl asked what happened there. Her friend ran up to her, sat down on the sofa, and handed her a newspaper. She asked Britney to read the article carefully. The flower of the ducal family, known throughout the Ellendor continent. This story was about her sister Iris. The article contained information that the Countess's secret life had been revealed. The article included a photograph with an image of a girl with a lily flower. Not long ago it became known that with the color of the ducal family, known throughout the Ellendor continent, she received the protection of the sacred kingdom. Oddly enough, it was not a wedding ceremony between the head of a sacred family and a noble flower, and not a word was said. A noble flower with aspects of purity and innocence turned out to be a weed with rotten horses. Was the Countess really like this from the very beginning? I was glad that the rumors spread so quickly, and her friend couldn't believe it was true. Did Iris really marry Earl Green? Everyone was surprised because the girl so wanted to marry Viscount Hutchison. And why did she do this? After all, Shaving didn't always insist that Iris really liked him, and she simply followed him. Britney said it all just happened somehow. Shave did not decide that even if she died in agony, she would never say that the Count proposed to her. Let everyone think that Iris runs after men, even people like the Viscount. This was her plan for revenge, and then everyone will consider her nothing more than a slutty wench. She must disgrace herself in front of everyone, and then she won't tolerate this, and instantly her superior is out on the street. Britney said that most likely these are just rumors. But rumors do not arise out of nowhere. Did she really cheat on him almost immediately after she got married? Is this really such a terrible girl? It was all nonsense. And Britney asked if she knew Henrietta Green. She is the younger sister of Earl Green. The girl, of course, knew her. Does his sister really know about everything too? If we were in her place, everyone would want to achieve justice. After all, this is her only brother. Lady Henrietta is also very close to Countess Nelanie. And what does this mean? Britney asked. The friend was horrified. Did she really not hear anything? A friend said that Britney seemed to have fallen out of the former world. She doesn't know any latest news. Or she pretended not to know. Before Countess Nelanie married, there were strong rumors that she was in love with Caverant Green. But it seemed like the Count rejected her. But when they appear together at events, the Countess's gaze is always drawn to him. She can't come to terms with the idea of being rejected. And now the carriage was drawn by horses. Iris and her husband Kay were sitting in the carriage. The girl said that he did not have to accompany her at all. But ours said that he is stronger than Nathan and Wallace. So he decided to go with his wife. Iris said that she knows everything. Well, he has a lot of things to do. And she is restless that because of her, he had to leave them. The young man looked carefully at his wife. And why is she so worried about him? At that moment, Kay touched Iris's face. He said that he was married for the first time, so there may be a lot he doesn't understand. But shouldn't a husband accompany his wife on the journey? Does she really think that caring for his beloved wife makes him uncomfortable? And he gently straightened her hair. The girl said that she didn't quite think so. Kay asked why the girl was dressed so simply. Iris said she didn't want to stand out too much among passers-by. She still didn't like this rumor that had spread throughout the country. The fact that the girl did not want to stand out was very strange for Kay. And he laughed. If so, then he said that his wife was not up to the task. The girl wanted to say something, but the Count quickly touched her lips with his finger, preventing her from doing this. He said that when he looks at her, it is very difficult for him to take his eyes off her. At this moment, the Count brushed 5 hairs from the girl's face. After that, he started to strip her shirt. He said that last time she owed him something. At that moment, he quickly picked her up in his arms and sat her down on him. The girl just yelped in surprise, and now she was already sitting in her husband's arms. The girl was very excited. The young man said that today he would not allow her to fall asleep just from one of his kisses. She looked at her husband in surprise, and he began to kiss her slowly. He slowly kissed her lips, then her neck, and went lower and lower to her chest. His kisses seemed to burn her skin. Iris said she was very ticklish, and she addressed her husband by name. At that moment, with a sharp movement, he laid the girl on the sofa. Iris just gasped and looked at him carefully, and he leaned on the girl with his whole body. The girl was embarrassed by the fact that they were in a carriage. There were no curtains here, and someone could see them at any moment. You said he doesn't care at all. And he began to slowly unbutton her vest. His hands were very gentle and his lips were hot. When he touched Iris, she seemed to melt all over. And so she also hugged him tightly and pulled him towards her. She didn't know what to do at this moment. She was guided only by the feeling that arose between them. How should she react to his touches and kisses? She was very pleased, but her eyes filled with fear. She still remembered that time with horror. Kay felt that the girl was tense. Most likely something is bothering her. He hugged her tenderly. Kay asked his wife to relax. And don't worry about anything. He told her that he wouldn't do anything she didn't want. If he does something she doesn't like, she can just say no. The girl became calmer and more relaxed and thanked him. Kay said that his sister always says that only a scoundrel takes a woman by force. Women need to be protected and protected. Beer sat the girl down. Iris was surprised to hear the information that her husband has a sister. Kay had a younger sister, but my sister's character was a bit… And Kay fell silent. And the Countess looked attentively in his eyes. The events took place in the Duchy of Green. The courtiers lined up in the living room. They were reincarnated. The girl, Green's sister, asked them if they had something to tell her, but the butler said that they were in the same situation as her. They learned that the gentleman was married after receiving marriage registration documents. But I didn't believe HSE. After all, she is his family. They simply had to as he brought the women home. The girl was very angry. The courtiers felt that they were to blame and they lowered their heads. One of the courtiers became very scared. After all, this woman always addressed them by persona when she was angry. She never called them by name. The girl folded her hands on her chest and said that this was no longer important. She asked where this stupid wolf is, her brother, and when he returns home. If they don't want a scandal, they will have to call him here immediately. At this moment, Earl Green's ears suddenly itched. He didn't understand what this sign was. And then in the carriage, the Count and Countess heard that they had already arrived at the place. The carriage stopped immediately. Kay never imagined that his wife would want to visit such a place. And now they have already left the carriage. The husband, as always, helped his wife out. She said that she wanted to know more about the person for whom she had come all this way, and she needs to introduce him. When they entered the room, it was clear that the person living in it was very fond of alcohol. Vespool was also sent away with empty bottles. A young man was sitting at the table. He was overgrown with stubble visible on his face. When he saw Iris and her husband in front of him, he grabbed his head. He could not believe that Lady Lilith herself came to him. He quickly opened his hand a little and looked at the girl. He greeted Lady Iris once again. She said that she had not seen Guger for so long. At that moment, the girl asked her husband to meet this man, and Guger looked at him in surprise. He once looked completely different. He was the steward of the Duke of Whitlow's estate, and now he just looked like a drunkard. The man turned to Iris. He said that she grew up to be a beautiful woman and also married Count Green, who is the keeper of sacred relics. The man was very happy for Milady. They sat at the table opposite each other, holding hands. And at that moment, Kay was standing not far from the door. The girl said that this man had always been partial to her, and she thanked him for it. This was a great support for her. After all, in the Duke's estate, he was one of the few who was kind to her. When she found out that the Duke kicked him out because he cared about her, Iris was very upset. It was natural that a man would take care of this girl. Guger said that he could not do otherwise because this girl was treated very cruelly. When Kay heard about this, he immediately turned his gaze to his wife. He didn't know that she was being treated poorly. He remembered that the butler told him that I had now asked him to find one of the former servants at the Duke of Whitlow's estate. The butler immediately reported this to Kay. Guger was driven away when Iris was just a child. Quite a few years passed, but she asked to find him just now and immediately came to see him. This was very strange for Kay. Why does she treat this man with such warmth? The man stood at the door and wondered what his wife, Rice, was thinking about now. Iris continued talking to the man. She was very glad that he was okay. In fact, she came to him to ask him for something, and the girl later asked Guger to become manager of the Levant mines. The man was very surprised to hear this. He asked her, but the Levant mines belong to Viscount Hutchess. How is this even possible? But the Countess was stunned by the information that they were now hers. And she wants him to take care of everything, from hiring workers to managing mining operations. A silent question froze on the man's lips. He didn't know what to answer the girl at that moment. The man thought for a moment. He thanked for the trust. Well, he can no longer take on such responsibility. After all, now he's just a drunk. He is completely different from the person he was before. Iris stood up from her chair. She said that she doesn't care who he is now, but what matters is who he will become in the future. He is the only person to whom she can entrust such an important matter. So she asked him to dare and take responsibility. He can handle her. Guger was surprised. The girl who was afraid to even look at the maid's eyes has now become so brave. Now she looks at him with such confidence. And it was amazing. The man stood up and bowed. He said that now his life is in her hands, and he is ready to take on any business if she believes in him. He will do his best. After that, Iris thanked him and walked to the door. At that moment, her husband turned to the girl. He said she could tell him that. Kay had absolutely no intention of letting any of Whitlow's servants into his house. He also has trusted people. Iris said that he would not work in the mansion. He would work in her gold mines and hire workers. And the Countess also added that his subordinates are his people. but they cannot be her people. Perhaps they don't carry a knife in Kay's back, but it's easy to deal with her for his sake. He could not answer these words. She was absolutely right. Kay was silent. Guger was exactly the person she needed at that moment. In the past, his abilities quickly gained recognition, and the Gauger was called to the imperial court. She didn't even think that his life was so hard, and at that moment, the girl approached her husband. She stroked his cheek affectionately and said that a man who constantly pokes his nose into his wife's affairs is repulsive. Kay was surprised. After that, he closed his eyes and exhaled. He said that then her husband would just watch. And it was a great idea, which both the Count and Countess liked, and they quickly walked around the city, and now they were already in the wagon heading back to the county. Kay said he received a letter yesterday. His sister Henrietta is now staying at the mansion. She arrived there yesterday. Iris was surprised. Now she will have to meet her husband's sister. The Count said that all this is possible to those rumors. She found out that he got married and came after his soul. Iris was silent. Her husband's family was rude to her. The Duke of Whitlow's flower is not that special. What good is it that this girl has a beautiful face? It was very difficult for Iris. She was constantly beaten. It's a pity that this useless body cannot be corrected even by spanking. They hated and despised her, but that was all in the past. Now everything will be completely different. Alford's family abused her. Now she has to figure out how she will be welcomed into Kay's family. And the girl clenched her fists. Perhaps it won't be sweet for her here either. But there was no other way out. And having gathered her thoughts, she decided to meet with her family and husband. And her husband was sure that she did not know who was spreading these rumors. Kay asked how long he should wait. After all, they turned him into pathetic trash in the eyes of the public. The girl realized that he suffered because of them. This was not entirely true, but in the future everything may be possible. Iris knew that the longer she lived out loud, the harder she hit its source. The girl asked her husband if he really thought they needed to draw a line. Meanwhile, the county had its own atmosphere. Someone shouted to the maids what they were doing. After all, the Count will return tomorrow evening. And the girl asked to stop doing nonsense. They need to do other work. The red-haired girl shouted that if they didn't manage to do anything today, they would receive canings from her personally. The courtiers looked at her and were surprised. This is the girl who bends her fingers like a fan here. This is too much even for the Countess. Nathan has spoken more than once. This girl is Jalay Marty. She is Milady Iris's servant. Why does the maid act so arrogantly as if she were the mistress of this mansion? But the courtier did not know what he could do with her. After all, she is the mistress's servant. He can't just deal with her like that. Green's sister was very annoyed. Is it possible that the Countess is absolutely incapable of educating and controlling her words? Also, this ridiculous rumor on the front pages of the newspapers. What is this stupid wolf thinking about? She meant her brother. And then one of the courtiers shouted that the gentleman had arrived. The carriage stopped. Kay came out and offered his hand to his wife. He asked the lady to go out more carefully. The courtiers welcomed Mr. Welcome back. Green's sister stood not far from everyone. Her gaze was not very kind. Looking at Green's wife, the girl thought that she was just some kind of Nyasha. While she was riding in the carriage, she read a very interesting article. Iris said that it turns out she has become very popular, and she raised up the newspaper in which this article was. The girl said that apparently someone wants to discredit her, and this someone is definitely not from the estate. Would anyone present dare to commit such meanness? And Iris laughed. At that moment, the girl saw her husband's sister in front of her. She asked if she was Henrietta. She was very pleased to meet her husband's sister. The husband's sister stood and was silent. You can't go through marriage alone. Yes, love marriages happen, but in fact it is always a union of two families. However, if you ask Kay why he didn't tell anyone, everything is very simple, he just forgot. All the courtiers were stunned, including the butler. The butler asked if this was really true. Kay said that he had such rumors and this information was simply making his head split. The moment he saw her face, he couldn't think of anything else. He liked Iris at first sight. That is, the gentleman considers this a sharp reason. Yes, it was somehow awkward with my sister. And you decided that he needed to talk to Rhea. Was this really awkward? The butler said she wouldn't want to talk to him. She's very angry with him. After all, the butler remembered how his sister screamed. That she is his family. And the courtiers had to inform her immediately when he transferred the woman home. The sister called her brother a stupid wolf. I asked when he would return, and I was also horrified by the fact that my parents don't know either. The courtiers directly reported the sister's words when she arrived at the estate. The butler presented the gentleman with a piece of paper and asked him to write a letter to his father. Until it's not too late. After all, he is a respectful son. Kay was unhappy, but agreed. The events took place in Greene County. He was very sorry that his wife had to go through all this. Henrietta is a little... Iris understood everything. She told her husband that everything was fine. He didn't have to worry. Iris said she would need to apologize. Kay told his wife that before she met her, he had to tell her something. Iris looked at her husband carefully. In addition to his sister, Kay also has a younger brother. Sister is the latest child. She's a little immature, a little capricious. Sometimes it can even go too far. One of the courtiers said that this was all true. Kay's sister is like that. At this moment, the husband and wife turned around sharply. Why is Nathan next to them? Iris thought they were going on their own. Nathan asked if he could accompany them. Nathan asked how the Count knew what his sister wanted to tell his wife. Iris thought about it. Usually aristocrats do not complain out loud, but her husband gets along well with the servants. Iris didn't understand why everyone was so worried about their meeting with Henrietta. Or maybe they will like each other and find a common language. But this girl was very worried, and she was worried. Nathan again asked the Countess not to pay attention to the words that Kay's sister might say. Take them to heart. Kay said that if they allowed him to hurt his wife, they would be in trouble. Everything was true to Iris, because the lady couldn't deal with her husband's sister so easily. At this moment, the men were shocked. Reese is Kay's sister, and it will be awkward if his wife and sister fight. Kay looked carefully at his wife's eyes. No matter what kind of sister he has, this is his relatives, and Iris will have to talk to her sooner or later. Let it be now. When they approached Kay's sister, this girl seemed quite strict. She had a stern expression on her face, and her hands were folded in front of her, as if she wanted to close herself off from the whole world and not have contact with it. When she and her husband first met, the girl thought that he was the boss here. And now, looking at his sister, the Countess had a different impression. It's as if her husband is afraid of his sister. As soon as Kay wanted to introduce his wife to his sister asked him to stop. She said she wanted to talk to her fiancé. No one understood whether this was a new kind of bullying. The Countess plucked up courage and sat down opposite her sister. She said that she was very glad to meet you. She pretended that her name was. About the fact that they recently got in touch with Kay. The girl also introduced herself. She said that her name was Henrietta, and the girl shouldn't be shy and just call her. The Countess said that she could also be called Rice for short, but Rhea asked permission to call her sister. Henrietta said she was very surprised. She would never have thought that her brother was capable of voluntarily tying the knot. At this point, Kay laughed. It turns out that his sister is still a prankster there. The sister asked why Iris chose their Kay as her husband. Why did she like him so much? What's so special about it? The girl asked how you can live with such an ungrateful person who didn't even call his own parents and didn't tell them about the wedding. If Iris thinks everything is fine, then that's quite a wake-up call. Nathan asked Rhea to watch her words. Well, the girl didn't understand what she said wrong. At the same time, Iris sat silent and looked at these two. After thinking a little, Iris said. She lowered her gaze and admitted honestly, the reason she chose him is simple. She just likes him. These words surprised not only Kay, but also everyone present, and the girl continued. Her chosen one had eyes the color of a cloudy sky, masculine, but so refined facial features, a sharp and stubborn chin, as well as a velvety and deep voice. His laughter is like the rustling of leaves blown by the wind. The girl said that he likes him completely, and she wants him to be hers for the rest of her life. Kay did not expect to hear this from her wife, and the girl remembered one of the episodes, when Kay offered to treat her wound. After all, if this is not done, a scar may remain on the ankle. Kay sat and looked at his wife in surprise. Does she really think so? From the very moment when he offered to treat her wound, he sank into her soul. She liked him so much that now she can't think about anyone else. The sister laughed and said that everything was clear and understandable to her. Well, girls still have strange taste. But nothing can be done here, and she once again called her little sister. The sister asked if they really loved each other so much that they decided to get married secretly. At that moment, Nathan choked on his food. The sister said that he could at least invite his family to the celebration. My sister was very disappointed, and Kay continued to look at his wife in fascination. He didn't expect her to say so many words to him. The sister asked what happened to their faces. Kay said they didn't have any ceremonies or celebrations. They just registered the marriage, and that's it. And at that moment, the sister screamed throughout the entire county. Has her brother really gone crazy? This cry was heard far beyond the boundaries of the county, and now the brother and sister were in the office. Kay asked Rhea what she was up to. The sister acted as if she had no plans. But the Count knew that his sister would simply not be very kind to his wife. Is Kay really not satisfied with her desire to be friends with the bride? The sister asked her brother not to worry. She just wants to know if she is right for him. If she can survive in their crazy family. My sister was not yet sure of this. But that wasn't the problem at all. And she asked her brother if he really didn't think so. The sister said, hasn't he heard the rumors that are circulating and his wife is in high society? Yes, nothing can be done about rumors. Kay thought for a second. He knew that these were just rumors and nothing more. Difficult Sister Iris most likely had a hand in this. The longer this goes on, the worse it will become. Kay asked what he needed to do. The sister smiled. Does he really not know what to do? He must prove otherwise. It's for his own good. Dam got the famous Duke of Whitlow flower. Many people envy her, so it is necessary to make sure that no one looks down on his wife. And the sister asked him to arrange the most expensive, luxurious, and grandiose wedding. After all, people don't like that. The sister promised to take care of everything. You don't even have to worry about it. Iris sat under a luxurious tree and stretched. She didn't even think that she would have so much free time while there were guests in the mansion. She sat on the tree and enjoyed reading a book. Rhea said that she would like to borrow her husband from her for a while. For some reason, Iris thought that she was getting her husband now. There seemed to be no cause for concern. She could relax and read a book in peace. The book was called The History of the Sacred Kingdom. She came across a book with a similar chronicle. It says that the Sacred Kingdom long ago renounced the beast people. Saint Benedict, who was to become the next pope, will go to prison as part of the conspiracy. But the conspirators did not know that Benedict was also a man of faith. He turned into a mouse. It was with him that the rebellion of rejected souls began. In those days, there were kingdoms, but the attitude towards them largely depended on the second hypostasis. I turned into a mouse, and he was despised for it. The people could not accept on the papal throne a man who turned into a source of death and suffering, shaking the continent. Iris was surprised. What does turning into a mouse have to do with suffering? He didn't have the plague. The girls thought that this was some kind of absurdity, but she continued to read further. Saint Benedict was a decent and honest man, with deep and strong religious convictions. But his personal qualities could not erase the stigma created by his incarnation. Everyone pointed fingers at him, and this was very unpleasant. In the eyes of ordinary people, mice were carriers of disease, harbingers of grief. A dirty rat cannot serve as the voice of the Almighty. But he hid his true face from everyone and set out to become the next pope. And then everyone turned their backs on him, and Benedict was left alone with his pain and misunderstanding. The clergy and common people were now openly rude to him and mocked him. But Benedict had the worst time after the betrayal of his mentor, the then pope. Gathering like-minded people around him, Benedict began the rebellion against the Sacred Kingdom. At this time, someone called out to Rice, and she raised her eyes. Her husband stood in front of her. She was surprised to see him here. Is his conversation with his sister already over? Kay said it was okay to say so. The young man asked his wife if she wanted to go for a walk. They held hands and went for a walk. She said that his sister calls him by such a cute nickname. Is she really referring to the nickname Little Gobbler? Yes, that's exactly what she meant. And the girl asked why his sister called him that. Kay said he got this nickname from childhood. After all, he knows how to change his appearance from birth. After all, others apply already at a conscious age. But with him, everything was different. He was still in diapers and could turn into a wolf cub. Then it seemed to him that his parents and family accepted him for who he was. But when he grew up, he realized that in fact many people ignored him. Then he was in despair and his little world collapsed. Iris looked at her husband carefully and waited for the story to continue. Kay said that he then began to spend almost all his time in the guise of a wolf. He ate a lot and slept a lot. Therefore, he quickly gained weight, and then his sister began to tease him for it. Iris apologized. She didn't think there was any reason for this question yet. But Kay said that there was no need to apologize and laughed. Kay said that he was a beastman and that meant constant danger. The young man handed his wife a peach and said that they were now in the same boat. His sister gave him a lot of nicknames, so he doesn't get angry at all. The Count said that he could not be hurt unless he himself wanted to be hurt. And at that moment, Kay asked the girl to marry him. She was surprised why he suddenly started talking about marriage. She didn't care about the ceremony at all. But Kay looked the girl straight in the eyes, and he held out a peach. He bent down and took a bite of the peach Iris was holding. Sweet juice flowed from it. Iris looked into her husband's eyes. She learned quite a lot about the beastmen. If she had a choice of who to punish and for the offenders, juice ran down Kay's cheek, and the girl quickly wiped it away. The peach flew to the ground. and the girl stood on tiptoe to reach her lover's lips, and she said she agreed. At that moment, their lips met in a kiss. At this moment, Rhea turned to her sister. She heard that the girl accepted the grub's offer. Iris asked when she found out about this. After all, they had just returned from a walk. Rhea laughed. She said she just knew, that's all. She also said that she would be the one organizing the event for them. After all, who else would do the wedding preparations than my husband's sister? Iris asked, but she had never been married either. It's probably difficult. Rhea asked not to worry. She has a married friend and she will help with everything. This friend for Rhea was the most reliable person in the world. With her help, she decided to organize a celebration worthy of the imperial family. And the sister said, "Isn't there another guest coming to their county soon? Due to recent rumors, some explanation needs to be made. Therefore, a priest and a saint of the kingdom will arrive at the mansion." And so several days passed. Rhea said that Dad was very worried about the long-standing rumors about their wedding. As you know, if a family is the custodian and receives the protection of the sacred kingdom, its reputation and behavior must be impeccable. After all, it goes without saying that rumors surrounding their family affect all of them. After all, in addition to the fact that they entered into a marriage without the approval of the Pope, unflattering rumors about Kay's wife are spreading across the continent. And the Count said that marriage is a union of two. And Kay doesn't understand at all why he needs to ask his dad's permission. The man hit the table with his hand. He asked if the Count really thought that he had achieved everything on his own. If it weren't for Dad, he wouldn't have achieved anything at all. How dare he say such a thing? But Kay just smiled. He asked to stop all this senseless bravado. After all, they are the only ones who do not pay with their lives, not just contact, but for the full use of relics. That is why the Green family will always be their guardians and protectors. The man was now speaking on behalf of the Holy Pope, and he asked the Count to maintain subordination. After all, Dad will not tolerate such an attitude towards himself, and he will report everything to him. The man shouted that the sacred kingdom was against their marriage to Countess Green. After all, they got married without the approval of the Pope. In addition, rumors about this girl stain the honor of the sacred kingdom. The Pope mercifully separates them from the Countess and encourages him to marry the woman he has chosen, a follower of their faith. Kay was very surprised. Did Dad really say this himself? The man was nervous but behaved calmly. He continued to sip his coffee. Kay looked straight into the man's eyes. The old man wouldn't dare. Obviously, this is someone's evil machinations. Don't they all understand this? And at that moment, the Count asked what if this was not true? What if the rumors about his wife are not true? But an article was published in a reputable publication, and this says something. Kay said that the man most likely does not understand that the tabloids profit from issues with such reliable stories. The man said that Kay was simply very fascinated by this girl and had completely lost his mind. Before he could finish speaking, he started coughing. After all, Kay grabbed him by the throat. Kay said that marriage is an oath to God, not an oath to the Pope or the Emperor. If the rumors are true and he has tarnished his honor, he will bear responsibility for it and divorce her. But if this is not the case, this means that someone dared to slander his wife, which means they dared to encroach on the honor of the Green family. Then the dad will have to personally apologize to his wife and officially give his blessing to this marriage. And now the man conveyed everything that Kay had said. Dad didn't believe it, but allowed the man to go. Iris thought about it. Kay is full of surprises. He is a completely unusual person. The Holy Father was not even present at the wedding of the Emperor himself. The man whom the Emperor admired sent him only a letter of congratulations and blessings. And now he will be forced not only to come in person, but also to apologize. Iris saw that her husband was taking very bold steps forward, and she decided that it was time for her to move too. Everyone in the county was already saying that the Countess was organizing a festive evening, which ordinary people would be able to attend. These rumors reached almost every home. Is it really possible for ordinary people to come there and have fun? All people were really looking forward to this holiday. But there were unflattering rumors about the Countess. Is that really true? Really, is it worth going there? What if in this way people get involved in something bad? And many simply did not want to go there. They said about the Countess that she was a vicious person, and her festive evening does not cancel this. The maids talked to each other. Could they really be present at the celebration too? One of them heard that entry is free for everyone. Have fun if you have nothing to do. It seems that even the head maid will go to the holiday. Then all the workers wanted to attend the holiday. And then one of the maids came up. She said that she understands that they are all in anticipation, well, for today they must do all their work perfectly. And the maid clapped her hands, so that the workers don't dream about the holiday, but start doing things. The events took place in the county. It was unclear why she was worried about herself in the first place. They usually boast about their noble status. And then Gillet even took a day off to come to a festive evening for a commoner. And they laughed. The maid began to imitate Gillet, to imagine that she would be present at the celebration as a viscountess, and not as Iris's maid. And the maid began to show how important she would be. This woman is just a careless, arrogant person, and Iris is very kind to her. At this time, Christina came into their room. As Iris asked, she monitored the maid's reactions. The Countess asked what she was like. They are a little more agitated, but otherwise act as normal. And the girl asked if there were any other instructions. They discussed the atmosphere in the city. Everyone is just gossiping about the upcoming holiday. But the rumors are further fueled by articles published in newspapers and magazines. One of the maids turned to the Countess. How can people who believe such a vile rumor come to the holiday to show off with themselves? Christina reminded her friend to be polite. It was just those people who don't know what gratitude is. That's why they're having this evening. Shouldn't fruit be picked when it's ripe? But if you give in to greed and wait it out, everything will go to waste and they will simply rot. Iris asked the maids to call Jamie. They will create the perfect holiday evening. The maid clutched her head. She didn't like it all. Everything must go perfectly, and their mistress Iris must be the most beautiful of all. Christina asked her friend not to scream. Otherwise, their mistress will run out to her screams. She needs to calmly change clothes. But the girl simply could not remain calm. She was very emotional. Today is such an important day. This is Iris's first official appearance as a countess. The maid couldn't find a necklace for Iris. She didn't know whether to take the big one or the bright one or the most expensive one. Christina asked her friend to put the jewelry back in its place, so that she doesn't accidentally tear them. At this time, someone said that the girls were great. The Count stood on the threshold. He was dressed as beautifully and elegantly as ever. His hair was styled and tied back with a bow. Kay asked where his rice was. The girls said she was changing clothes inside. Kay asked if all that was left was to choose the accessories. He told the maids that they could be free. He would take care of it himself. After all, it's also time for the girls to get ready for the evening. One of the girls wanted to say that she doesn't like these holidays. But Christina quickly covered her mouth with her hands. The girl said, of course. And they also went to prepare. The maids wished the Count a good time and disappeared out the door. Suddenly, Iris's quiet footsteps were heard. Kay was simply stunned by her beauty. The girl did not expect to see her husband here. She asked him when he came. The girl had her hair beautifully styled and decorated with a hairpin with blue flowers. She was also wearing a blue fluffy dress. Kay said he had just arrived, and today she is especially beautiful. The girl was very afraid that the dress would not suit her, but she is very glad that her husband likes everything. Iris asked where her maids were. Kay said that he let them go. These also need to get together, and he will help her choose the accessories himself. The young man said that he had already picked up something, and he opened a box in front of her containing a pearl necklace and earrings. Iris wanted to take the box of decorations, but Kay did not allow her to do this. She said that he would dress them for her himself. Kay said that she doesn't share her plans with him at all. He asked her to at least let him do this. The girl cleverly got her hands on Jamie too, because he doesn't tell him anything anymore either. He folded his wings himself. Apparently the butler is learning quickly from Kay. Kay asked how she knew what kind of beast Jamie was turning into. Iris remembered that she shouldn't know about this, and the Count realized that his wife would not give him answers to this question. Kay hoped that one day he would have the opportunity to find out, and he snapped the necklace around the girl's neck, and Iris thought, I wonder if she will ever be able to tell him this, that she had already lived out this life and once even died. But her life did not end as it should have been. It began anew. Well, who would believe this? Even if they believe it, it is unknown how they will react to it. And she doesn't yet have the strength to defend herself. Think about nothing else. And he kissed her tenderly on the neck. He took her by the shoulders and asked if she really found time to think about something while he was doing this. At that moment, one of the county employees said that it was time for them to leave. Kay said they were on their way. Kay said that they had enough of fooling around and it was time to go. And he kissed his wife again. Throughout the duchy, it was felt that today was a holiday. Multicolored flags hung throughout the area, and people gradually gathered in the county. Gillet sat at the table and was pleased with herself. She was well prepared. The girl sat and watched the girls present. She didn't even expect that local noble ladies would be here too. So everything couldn't come at a better time. Apparently, they came out of interest in the source of the rumors. For these girls, the word ladies is too strong a word. Gillette grinned and covered herself with her fan. She was as self-confident as always. Today, the girl believed that she was the most beautiful in the entire duchy. At that moment, a worker ran in and shouted that the Count and Countess Green were about to arrive. Gillet made a frightened face and covered herself with a fan. Everyone cheerfully greeted and applauded the approaching horse-drawn horse. Gillette was a little nervous. She didn't understand why make such a fuss and greet the Count and Countess like that. Well, her face became very surprised. She saw. The couple held hands and looked at each other tenderly. Iris was simply stunning. She had a beautiful hairstyle and an amazingly heavenly headdress. The girl smiled cheerfully. She didn't expect so many people to come to their wedding. She was truly happy. All people were simply fascinated by this couple. They looked amazing. It was just an incredibly beautiful couple. Everyone present, without exception, was fascinated. Only Gillette was nervous. She was very angry. The girl didn't understand why everyone was coming together. What's so special about them? Why was everyone making such a fuss? The Count and Countess walked slowly across the square. Count Green could not take his eyes off his companion. He continued to admire her all the time. Gillet stood not far from them and gnashed her teeth. But she can't lose. And at that moment, Count and Countess Iris noticed Gillet standing nearby. The girl tried to portray happiness. Finally, the Count arrived. She had been waiting for him for so long. And at this moment, those present immediately began to whisper, "Why is this girl dressed up like that? Which house is she from?" Gillet's parents were also present. The father and mother were stunned. Where is their daughter dressed up like that? Iris said Gillet looks great today. It was natural. This is a celebration organized by the Duke of Whitlow's flower, and the girl thanked that the Count and Countess had invited her to the celebration. She just smiled. She did not remember at all that she had invited anyone separately to the ceremony. Anyone who wished could come to the ceremony. Iris said that anyone who wants to can attend these festivities, and you don't need to thank her for that. And the girl smiled happily. Gillet understood everything and also showed a happy face. Gillette quickly moved away from the Count and Countess. She was very upset. It's better to keep your ears to the ground. Otherwise, you can quickly fall off the pedestal of the main star of the evening. The approaching red-haired girl caused heated discussion in the community. Iris clapped her hands. She addressed the dear guests who gathered in the square today. She thanked everyone, without exception, for taking the time to come to this festive evening. It was very important for her to see so many people here. The girl wished everyone a pleasant evening. At that moment, a man emerged from the crowd. I asked Count, "Does he know what rumors are circulating around the Countess?" Everyone immediately began looking at each other and whispering. The man looked at Iris carefully. Is he really going to ruin the whole celebration? Iris held on bravely. She was just silent. At this moment, Earl Green jerked forward. He wanted to approach and deal with this man properly. But the Countess asked him to stop. She asked to be allowed to talk to him. The girl told the man that it was very rude of him. The man knew everything and asked him to forgive him. He also asked if this evening was not organized to clarify the truth about the rumors to everyone. Iris was very surprised to explain the word. Why should she explain something to anyone today? After all, people who have already heard these provocative rumors believe what they themselves want to believe. In the end, this concerns only the Count and Countess. Isn't it enough that her husband and his family know the truth? The girl hugged the Count's hand and looked tenderly into his eyes. But even the Sacred Kingdom appointed a person to know the truth, and therefore this is a problem that cannot be avoided with such words. And the man asked if he was wrong. Earl Green immediately frowned. He asked the man a question and which newspaper he was from. The man replied that his name was Whiting, and that he was from the weekly Alurbo newspaper. The man stood and wrote something in a notebook. Today he would like to interview Countess Green. Alurbo was the largest and most authoritative newspaper with branches in most countries on the Elrond continent. Whiting was always at the center of major scandals. He is known for his flashy reporting. He writes articles without bias or embellishment. And Iris also had a very high opinion of him. In Iris's past life, he wrote an article about how Kay was brutally killed just because he was a beastman. This reporter's protest in his articles caused the Emperor's wrath, and for this he was executed. Remembering his convictions, the Countess had no doubt that he would be the one to appear that evening, because it is extremely important for him to find out the truth. The Countess noticed that her husband did not like this at all, but the reporter's importunity was exactly what she needed now. The girl hugged Kay's arm and smiled sweetly at him. She told him that everything was fine and he shouldn't worry. The Countess seemed pleased that everyone was showing such interest in her that they were willing to delve into her life. Well, then now is the time when she needs to answer this. Iris said, Okay, she's ready to do the interview. Such words surprised the reporter a little, but he prepared his pen and notepad to write down all the interesting facts. Iris asked if everyone really wanted to get to the bottom of the truth. Gillet was also very interested in learning about Iris's life. Not far away, there was a man standing in the crowd of people, and he decided that the time had finally come for him to speak out. The man said he believed the event would be less stressful if he introduced himself, and the man came forward a little. He said that he is the Knight of Light, also known as the Flame of Battle. It is also called a Raging Flame, and his name is Baron Jamie Russell. This young man was the Count's butler, and he bowed gallantly. Everyone recognized this young man, because he was a faithful servant of the Count and Countess. Apparently, the young man was so faithful that he was even privy to their personal life. Jamie said that their precious Countess did not have to justify herself, and he pushed the girl away with his hand. Therefore, he would like to personally dispel all rumors. He asked all the reporters who are here now, "Raise your hands, everyone." Many men came out of the crowd holding notebooks with them. At this point, Jamie pointed his finger at one of the reporters. He said that he was the first to write an article about the Countess. The man was shocked. It was true. But how could he know about it? Jamie asked the reporter how he heard the news. The man scratched the back of his head. To be honest, he didn't learn this news from anyone. "I just wrote from hearsay." Jamie repeated the word again. The basis for the article was taken only from rumors. That is, he wrote an article based solely on rumors, without even verifying whether they were true or not. The man agreed. Everything was as the butler said. After that, Jamie pointed his finger at another reporter from the newspaper. He said his newspaper was the first to publish the unsubstantiated rumor. But the newspaper and the building are respected, and he would like to believe that she would not publish an article based solely on rumors. Yes, but the man said he was interviewing one person. I asked if this person was here. The young man said yes. He pointed his finger at the young girl. The girl immediately began to protest. She asked what was wrong with that. Jamie asked the girl if she personally saw how Countess Green secretly met with Viscount Alford Hutchess. The girl said no. She didn't see it personally, she just heard it somewhere. And the girl quickly pointed her finger at another lady present. The woman said she didn't see it either, but she heard it. And she pointed her finger at another lady who told her. That girl also said that they told her this and pointed her finger at the other one. And so the girls started pointing at each other. The people began to make noise and throw blame on each other. And Gillet stood upset. She couldn't even believe that everything would turn out like this. After the noise, there was only one girl left who personally saw and told everyone this rumor. The butler approached her and asked if she personally saw Countess Green meeting the Viscount. After thinking a little, the girl said no. Goretzky again asked her who told her about this, and she quickly looked at Gillet, who was standing next to her. The girl with red hair immediately lowered her head. What should she do now? After all, now they will ask her whether she personally saw these meetings, and so the girl said that she heard about this from Gillet. Gillette tried to quickly get out. She said she heard it from the maids. Jamie said it couldn't just happen. And the girl with red hair said that the maids saw everything with their own eyes. And Jamie repeated again that he once again told her that this could not be true. The young man asked if the girl wanted to know why he didn't believe her. The girl screamed no. She was sure it was true. She said these people lie every time they open their mouths because they are all just jealous of her. And the girl confirmed that everything was correct. Viscount Hutchess himself spoke about this. He said that he and the Countess had a relationship from the very beginning. But the Countess wanted more honor and respect, so Gillet managed to finish speaking when the butler interrupted her. He said everything was correct. Therefore, he personally invited Viscount Hutchess here, so that he would tell everyone and develop all the rumors that had developed around the Countess. The Viscount and Gillet stood opposite each other. They looked carefully into each other's eyes, and the butler said that now they will need to put the puzzle together. Jamie asked Viscount Alford Hutchess a question. Is it true that he had a relationship with her ladyship in the past? A lot of people gathered. Everyone wanted to know the truth now. The Viscount asked to wait. He asked how he could. But at that moment, Gillet interrupted him. She asked him to tell the truth. Without waiting for a word from him, she shouted that when he arrived at the mansion, she told everyone about how passionately she loved the Countess. At that moment, the Viscount screamed that he had never said that. Does everyone really think that he is so crazy to talk such nonsense? At this point, Gillette turned to Jamie. She heard it all then. The Viscount then spoke about his love in front of the maids, and the girl asked to ask them about it. Jamie said that he had been asking them for a long time. They said the Viscount never said anything like that. Gillet was stunned. How is this possible? This is simply impossible. They heard everything, and they liked what the Viscount said. At that moment, Gillet's father and mother approached the Count and Countess. They fell to their knees and asked to be forgiven. The father asked His Excellency for forgiveness. It turns out he is a bad father. He repented and asked to forgive his daughter's bad manners. They asked His Excellency to have mercy on them. At this moment, the parents were on their knees. They begged the lady. At that moment, Gillet called out to her father. Iris was simply stunned. It was somehow uneasy for her to see Gillet's mother and father sitting on their knees in front of her. Yes, Lady Gillet is a foolish child, since her parents apologized for her on their knees. And Gillet stood and watched in shock what was happening. What has she done? Why did everything turn out this way? Everything should be exactly the opposite. She did all this for the sake of the Count. Iris asked her parents to stand up. She held out her hands for them to grasp and rise up. At this moment, she looked at Gillet. The Countess said that it was not they who needed to apologize to her. After all, they didn't do anything wrong. Only their daughter should apologize. It was as if glass had broken. Gillet fell to her knees in front of the Count and Countess. She said that she was the one who defamed them. The girl asked to be punished. After all, it's all her fault. People began to whisper. Did the girl really think she could get away with it? She lied to her master. Iris said no. Her parents and Gillet looked at her carefully. The girl said, since the misunderstanding was all resolved and she apologized to her, Iris won't punish her. And she smiled sweetly. The Countess was so kind that even no one expected this. The people immediately whispered that the Countess was very merciful. She is not called one of the most beautiful ladies for nothing. The reporter just hacked and wrote something down in his notebook again. He thought that this was not mercy at all. This woman skillfully prepares the ground for publicity. After all, almost all the reporters from major publications have gathered here today. The magnanimous Countess Green forgives Viscountess Murdy, who spread defamatory rumors about her. But this is never forgiveness, but the best way to get rid of a person. In this way, without poisoning society against him, Lady Gillet and her family were caught in a trap of shame and censure, and now they will be outcasts. In this case, the Countess herself will come out unscathed. That's all forgiveness is. Iris Green was a very unusual and interesting woman, and in the morning there were already articles in the newspapers that the Duke of Whitlow's flower embodies nobility. The reporters probably guessed everything, but still made her a saint. Iris was bathing in the bath and thinking. When she has no influence and connections in society, press attention is to her advantage. The Duke of Whitlow's flower is a nickname that has stuck with her, that she was just dreaming of when she would get rid of him. The girl was taking a bath and thinking. At that moment, someone knocked on the door. Her husband, Kay, appeared on the threshold. In his hand, he held a tray with a bottle of wine, glasses, and grapes. But when the girl saw him, she covered her chest and began to scream hysterically. The girl asked if something had happened. Kay said that nothing happened, he just wanted to take a bath. Well, drink some wine with her. The man quickly poured red wine into the girl's glass. Iris asked if he had any toast. Kay said of course there is. Rumors about her will stop, and they will just have a grand wedding. Today she has won the favor of reporter Whitink. Kay asked which of these toasts is better. She can choose it herself. After thinking a little, the girl said, she said all his toasts were great. There was a clink of glasses. Kay said Jamie got his bearings quickly. Wedding invitations have been sent to all guests. The problem with the Sacred Kingdom has also been resolved. All that remains is to receive the blessing. The girl bought wine and said that she was very glad that everything was resolved successfully. Kay looked at his wife in surprise. He twitched so much that he spilled some wine. He quickly turned away from her and asked if she had ever been to weddings. At that moment, he took a grape. The girl said no. I haven't been to any weddings. Kay brought his wife a grape and said that she would be very tired. Organizing a wedding takes a lot of effort. Therefore, while there is time, you need to rest. And he put the grape in her mouth. The girls were very pleased that the Count took care of her. No one had ever cared about her before. Rather, he looked carefully at the girl, and his hand came closer to her face. He gently stroked her hair and kissed him passionately. They sat near the bath and kissed. Kay sat on the edge of the bathtub, and the girl was in the water. Another second and she wrapped her arms around Kay's neck. Kay, in turn, hugged her waist and touched her naked body. Her skin was soft and smooth as silk. The girl let out a languid moan. They continued kissing. Iris thought that sometimes she felt like Kay wasn't enough for her. The girl told the Count that he needed to wait a little longer. The young man said no. He said that the wedding is coming soon, so until then... And he showered kisses on her neck and body. The girl so wanted to become one with him. She opened her heart and all of herself to Kay. When did it start? Since when did she choose him and recognize him as her man? And all because… that day. One of the episodes from a past life. When he walked up to her and took her hand. And she cried. Does she really love him? She remembered Branda's story. She has to do something for her because she is her sister. When a man brings money, he needs to please. The sister was sure that she knew how to do it. Not all men have the right to have special privileges or make special demands. Therefore, she must try and please. She remembered how the man harassed her. But she didn't enjoy it. She remembered how the Viscount beat her and called her a slut. After all, she deceived him and it was adultery. At the behest of Britney, who became empress. It didn't take her husband Alford long to find out about her adventures. After that, he simply beat his wife. It was a great shame. How dare she do this? How dare she cheat on him? He was the rod on her legs. He called his wife all sorts of names. The next day, she was met by Britney. Iris was covered in bruises. Britney asked what was wrong with her expression. How can she win a man's heart with such a look? The girl laughed merrily. She didn't even imagine how bad her sister was. However, there was no way to refuse the request of Britney, who often acts with violence and threats. Britney grabbed Iris by the hair. She said that wouldn't do. Britney asked the girl to look at herself. Who does she want to seduce in this form? The girl said that she had done this before. She talked about the times of their youth. Every time the girl thought something similar. Brit didn't ask the maids to dress her sister up properly, because today she has a very important role to play. The girl laughed ominously. What if Britney's new object of desire doesn't like her? Maybe then something will finally change. Many guests gathered at the banquet. There was a gorgeous cake on the table. Her Majesty the Empress hosted a truly magnificent banquet. Iris stood near the column. It was very difficult for her to stand. After all, her legs hurt a lot from the beatings. The girl lifted her dress and looked. The wounds were practically no longer bleeding. She leaned on the glass and tried to stand. Even if she returns home, she will not have peace there. Still, home is better than here. The girl decided that she needed to leave before it started to rain. She looked carefully out the window. In the window, she saw her sister kissing a man. Is this man Caverant Green? Iris recognized him once. He was Britney's lover. And the girl decided that she needed to go out so as not to run into them. That day, she thought how good it was that it rained so hard. First of all, there wasn't a soul around. And she walked slowly through the park. Secondly, her burning pain managed to cool down a little. In that cold rain, she would have been called crazy. If only someone had noticed her at that moment, it didn't matter to her, because the only thing that mattered to her was to relieve the unbearable pain. The girl opened her hands and sat down on the bench. She couldn't walk very fast. She needs to get home before Alford notices her absence. And at that moment, the girl heard someone talking. It was about Captain Piemondo, and that his behavior was suspicious. He should be kept an eye on. The young man said that this is why he came to the banquet. When Iris looked back, she saw two men talking. One of them was Kay. The young man asked Jamie if he got those earrings. The girl saw this man, Caverant Green, again, and drops ran down his face. He was very good-looking. The young man said that he brought them with him. Iris didn't understand why he was here now. She hoped so much that there would be no one in the park when it rained. The young man handed over the earrings and said that he didn't think it was a religion. Kay took them in his hand and looked at them. And I found him. He let me go and said that he was free for now. Iris sat down on the ground and wrapped her arms around her legs. She really wouldn't want anyone to notice her. The captain knew that someone had been sitting at the bench for some time, and he quickly looked behind the bench. Behind, a beautiful girl was sitting on a bench. Kay was surprised to see Viscountess Hutchess there. Iris wanted to say something but couldn't find the right words. Kay pours like a bucket. If she continues to sit here, she will definitely get sick. Kay's gaze became surprised. At that moment, he saw that the girl's legs were covered in bloody wounds. The young man asked who did this to her. The girl said everything was fine, and he shouldn't worry. She quickly covered her legs with her dress. Kay, ask her. Does she think this is a trifle? Now he'll call someone. But Iris shouted no. She said she was fine, and she asked the young man to simply pretend as if he had not seen anything. The girl simply begged him about it. Kay said that hushing up and hiding this will not solve the problem. This can be repeated again and again. The girl knew all this very well, but she had no other choice. Kay said that some people are able to survive only by keeping quiet and hiding their problems. But it's not right. Kay was brought to kneel in front of Iris. The young man handed the girl a bottle of liquid. He asked to apply this lotion on the wounds as soon as possible. Otherwise, there will be scars on her beautiful calves. The girl took the bottle and looked at it carefully. Kay was prepared to keep what he saw here a secret. Iris was grateful to him. After that, Kay turned around and walked away. This was their first meeting, but at that moment, the girl asked him for forgiveness. She also thanked him for the medicine. He felt sorry for this girl. At that moment, Kay stopped and turned around. He walked closer to Iris and knelt down again. He gave Triss's earrings to this girl. Kay said that these earrings bring good luck to the wearer. Iris didn't understand why he gave them to her. Kay said that he had a feeling that she really needed luck, and she needs her much more than he does. And he looked carefully into her eyes. The girl was very surprised. Tears flowed from her eyes. Kay wished Viscountess Hatchis good luck. This was their first meeting. A few days later, Iris and her husband were walking through the estate, and Cleveland Green was walking towards them. On that rainy day, her first and last conversation with Kay took place, and that was the only time they were alone. The girl looked at Kay, and he didn't even pay attention to her. That gloomy bad day was warmed by the warmest kind gesture in her life, which was deeply imprinted in her heart. Kay walked by proudly and seemed not to notice Iris, but this was completely wrong. After some time, he looked back and looked after the girl. She also left an imprint on his memory. She understood. From that moment on, she began to like Kay. After all, at that time he wanted to save her life, and now she has the opportunity to hug him. He's very close. The girl addressed him by name and said that he is the only ray of sunshine in her life. At that moment, Kay looked so tenderly at his Iris and wrapped her in a towel. Iris thanked him. She was glad that now she could spend her life with him. After that, Kay jumped out of the bathroom and closed the door behind him. His body was filled with some incomprehensible feeling. The face flushed. When he touched his heart, it was beating very fast. This girl was driving him crazy. He tries his best to endure and control himself. But why is she looking at him like that? He thought she would be surprised, but in the end, it was she who caught him off guard. At that moment, courtiers were passing nearby. They turned to him and asked what he was doing in front of the ladies' room. And why is it so red? Kay asked not to approach him, but he did not want to explain anything to the courtiers. Jamie asked to leave the gentleman alone because he is going through difficult times now. Jamie said the Count contacted him about an invitation to the wedding, and he seems very upset. The butler asked if Kay could talk to his father directly. Kay understood everything and told the courtiers that they could be free. Wallace began to ask what kind of difficult times their master is having. He asked not to ignore him, and Kay asked to stop now. Jamie promised that he would tell Wallace everything later. The events took place in Count Green's communications room. Many years ago, after the mages, engineers created means of communication. This apparatus could be owned by state-owned institutions, as well as persons who were of particular importance in the country. And so I sat in front of this device and thought. He didn't think things would get so bad, and so he pressed the button with his finger. The device began to glow green, and at that moment, Kay heard his father's voice. He addressed him formally and called him Caverant Green. It was clear that the father was in a bad mood. Kay said he had some circumstances. The father said that an apology precedes a greeting. Father and mother could not believe their eyes when they saw the newspaper, because they believed him more than some piece of paper. Kay understood everything. This whole situation was very difficult. The father asked if his chosen one was the Duke of Whitlow's flower. As far as he had heard, the Duke kept his daughter a secret, saying that he did not want to show her to just anyone. At this moment, my mother joined the conversation. She said that all men like beautiful women, but he and his father are not strangers to him, and he grew up and decided himself who to marry. But why didn't he tell his family about this? Why are they the last to know about everything? Mom tried to somehow understand her son. The Duke of Whitlaw was a very greedy man, and everyone knew about it. His first daughter, Shave, did not make her debut in secular society too early. Why then did he hide his second daughter? Naturally for sale. To make, who cared more about pretty Britney, envy her and create anticipation. Mom asked what he gave to the Duke to get his daughter. Kay said he didn't do anything, and everything is not as they imagined. The parents decided to check everything and draw conclusions. Mom said that her son is lying to them even now. On the day her son took his bride, Mama heard that one of Green's mines had been taken over by Whitlaw. Kay asked where this information came from. If his parents have a professional observer, then they are simply obliged to tell him who he is. Mom started crying and asked her father what they should do now. Their dear son became a big liar. The father said it was his fault. Most likely he raised him wrong. He should have taken better care of his education. As a result, his son grew up and became a man who buys women. Kay shouted that he could actually hear their conversation. He started buying women to take her wives. And this is wrong. His parents asked if Lady Whitlow agreed to marry him. Kay cannot tell his parents that his wife arranged everything herself. After all, this will only make the conversation more complicated. Kay grabbed his head. He told them that this was the situation. Iris agrees to marry him, and she is no longer Lady Whitlow but Countess Green. The parents fell silent. After a short pause, the parents said that they were leaving today. Father was ready to take the fastest cart. He and his mother will arrive to him in 2-3 days. But if it turned out that Lady Whitlow was against this marriage, he should think about becoming the first divorced person in their family. Kay said okay. Everyone was very glad that this whole situation with Countess Green had been cleared up. One of the girls asked Britney. She probably breathed a sigh of relief. Everything was right. According to those around her, the girl was very worried about her younger sister. Yes, their dear Britney has gone through so much stress. Shaving didn't sit there in rage. On the contrary, she was disappointed with this outcome. It was all Iris's fault. Britney was absolutely furious. But one of the girls thought differently. She didn't know what commoners thought about this. But how could they desecrate the name of the Whitlow family? Why didn't anyone punish them for such acts? Britney just agreed. The most important thing is that everything was resolved. Of course, her sister is unlikely to forgive those who offended her. One of the girls said that the one who started the rumor was a maid in the Green family. Was it really jealousy? Britney admitted that she was also jealous of Iris. The girl apologized that her words offended Lady Britney. At that moment, the maid came up and said that Lady Britney had received a letter, and she handed the girl an envelope. Britney took the envelope in her hands in surprise. She was very surprised to see that. In this envelope came an invitation to the wedding of Count and Countess Green. Are they really having a wedding? Is her sister getting married? The girl was also surprised by who was holding the wedding. The girl's face changed. Her friends started asking what happened to her. She said that Count and Countess Green would soon marry. The misunderstanding has been resolved, and this is great news. This is to be expected. Kay most likely doesn't care about the rumors about his wife. He probably told his countess off for this. Did he really agree to something so clever? And the other one died in her place before getting married under such circumstances. Britney continued to read the letter and didn't believe it. She was not in secular society. And why is the name of the person conducting the wedding not written here? Iris doesn't even know how to be a real lady. One of the girls asked Britney what was wrong with her expression. The girl picked up the letter and gasped. The host of the social banquet will be Countess Nelanicus Janal. Countess Nelanicus is, after all, the most popular in especially secular society. Well, this girl used to say that she really admires Count Green. And now she has to officiate his wedding. And why were the friends so noisy? Britney was surprised that even Countess Nelanicus Janal accepted their Iris. So she's marrying Earl Green. Britney laughed hysterically. What could be better than this? And she invited the girls to start celebrating. Everyone in the county began to prepare for the celebration. The girl who was organizing the wedding asked if these were all samples. The girls were presented with several types of fabric. Vanya quickly assessed them by touch. Everything was not bad, considering the short time frame that was given. The girl thought for a while. After that, she raised her finger and said that Countess Green only needed to send the last 2 samples. The maid said okay. The girl who organized the wedding was called Nels, and she tried really hard. She wanted this wedding to be just perfect. Green's sister asked Nels, did she really want to do this? Well, the girl simply could not refuse her best friend. Reese said that her brother was ready for her to spend her entire fortune on wedding preparations, and she asked her friend what she thought about this. Unexpectedly, this count, who was always greedy, asked her to prepare a party. The girl said that the wedding is so important that the help of the secular goddess Countess Janal is simply necessary. The countess only smiled at this. Reese asked. She was reading the newspaper. After all, from that time on, there was a commotion due to the fact that they registered the marriage only on paper without a wedding. At the same time, Earl Green's reputation was slightly tarnished. Did he really marry the Whitlow flower? Everyone understood why men were so fascinated by her. After all, her beauty cannot be conveyed even in portraits. Reese said that, moreover, she had absolutely no idea where the rumor came from that she liked her brother. Thanks to this, the public's reaction to the wedding became even more interesting. Countess Janelle said the girl was saying terrible things. To be honest, she didn't care at all. By the way, such rumors generally spread. There is only one reason why she takes upon herself to organize this wedding: to become part of the greatest event in the life of Countess Green, the talk about which never ceases. The girls just wanted her name to be written next to his. No one would be able to say a word to her. They would be too scared to even raise their head to her presence. And the girl said to give the rice to the Countess so that she would be ready for the surprise. The events took place in Green County. She sat on the bed and read a book. She found this book and began reading it to better understand her future husband. But the more she immersed herself in the situation with the beast people, she began to feel uneasy. The first beastmen rebellion ended in failure, but Benedict did not give up. As soon as you did, he hid in the shadows, quietly gathering people who could help him. Then the disc would say that people are people too, and turning into a beast is not God's curse, but a blessing. Dad persecutes people because of feelings of inferiority because he did not receive God's water. The magicians also received God's gift. Now these are beast people. But when they choose what then to turn their attention to, Dad, he also has no magical talent. So the fall of magicians is a destined future. The magicians without faith agreed with Benedict's words, and he, in turn, incited the gifted, and began the second uprising of the beast people. It was a war to the death, and the eastern sea of Amas turned blood red. If it happens in this life, it will be the same as I did in the past. Third rise of the beastmen. She understands him well now, and if she were in his place, she would have done the same. Well, this can't go on any longer. After all, the past of her life and his death were in vain. Iris thought about it. Now she can change everything. The only way is to stop the war and change the situation in your favor. At that moment, Kay entered the room. He was wearing a robe. It was so sudden that the girl slammed forcefully towards them. She was very surprised to see him. The man realized that at that moment he had interrupted her reading. He said to ignore him and continue his reading. The girl just gasped. After all, his chest was almost completely bare. How can you not pay attention when he stands just like that in front of her? Well, the man didn't understand why he would bother her. He sat down on the edge of the bed and quickly took off his slippers. Kay asked why his wife had that face again. She seemed confused. Iris asked him not to laugh at her. She can't help her expression. He just exhaled and laid his head on Iris's shoulder. The girl immediately realized that something was wrong. She asked something happened to him. Kay closed his eyes and said that there was one problem, and this applies to his parents. When his parents found out about the wedding, they were very angry. Most likely, they will arrive at the mansion in 2 days. Oddly enough, they were never interested in his affairs. Therefore, he did not expect such a reaction from them at all. She listened to him attentively with her hands crossed on the book. He had never dated women, much less introduced anyone to his parents. And he had no idea what they would say. For some reason, I didn't like these words. She looked him straight in the eye and told him he was a liar. How come he hasn't met anyone? Kay looked at Iris in surprise. Why would he lie for this reason? It just can't be. But when Iris looked into her husband's eyes, she thought again how beautiful he is to her, and she really wanted to cuddle him. Kay did not understand why the girl behaved this way. Kay wanted his hand and asked if he was really handsome. The girl asked if it wasn't obvious. Kay just hacked, his face flushed red. And at that moment, he looked Iris straight in the eyes and said that he really wanted to kiss her. The girl said that she really wanted it too, and the young man asked her permission. Can this be done or not? Iris understood that her husband had changed a lot after that time. But what happened to him? Until now, he had never asked permission to kiss. What is stopping him now? Kay said it would be done and kissed Iris with lightning speed. Their kisses were always so sweet and hot. Kay enjoyed their kisses and repeated his wife's name. After that, he pulled away from her lips and put his head on her chest. He had never felt so good with anyone before. He wasn't like this before. Everything has changed since Jen, and he started kissing his wife again. The girl felt very hot from his hugs and kisses. Kay pulled away from his wife for a second. He asked for forgiveness, because now he is very excited. And he lifted the girl from the bed. It's simple. When she said that he was handsome, Kay seemed unable to find the right words, and he just looked carefully into Iris's eyes. He quickly took her hand in his and promised to do everything in his power to prevent this. But his parents will be able to hurt him, and he hates the very idea that his wife could get used to such an attitude. Iris said that she was already used to it, and she will be able to withstand the relationship of his parents. Kay told his wife that the wounds would heal over time, and he will make sure that not a scratch remains on her soft skin. Iris did not quite understand the meaning of these words now. The girl asked, even if she becomes a fragile and always crying lady. Without thinking for a long time, Kay said yes. He said she could cry as much as she wanted. At that moment, Iris removed her hand from her husband's. She thanked him for everything. She said that she would not just weakly rely on him. She no longer wants to live as someone's flower. She will never do this again. And then a snow-white carriage drove up to Greene County. Now the carriage opened and everyone heard a man's voice. The man said that a lot of time had passed. This is not the reason he would want to come here. He asked his wife if she thought the same. His wife confirmed his words and called him her beloved. It was Kay's parents who arrived. As soon as they got out of the carriage, they were met by their son along with his bride. And the parents asked how their son was doing. They stood and looked in surprise at the girl who was on the arm of their son. And the parents seemed speechless. And now Greene's parents were sitting in the living room. My mother was sitting and quietly drinking tea. And the father watched his bride with folded hands. They were looking at the appraising girl who could soon become their bride. And also, this girl will become the wife of their son for life. The courtiers stood nearby and also watched their reactions. Mom looked around with a skeptical look. A little further away stood the maids who served the mistresses. Everyone was waiting for the parents' reaction. After a while, Mom cleared her throat. The girl who was about to become their daughter-in-law was sitting right in front of them. At first glance, one could say that Duke Whitlow's flower was definitely beautiful, as if God had given her special attention. There is not a single flaw in her appearance. But is she as beautiful at heart? It may be true that the Duke really cared about his daughter and did not let her out into society. The mother was very embarrassed that her son was sitting with such a stupid smile on his face. After a while, the mother said that she wanted to speak to Lady Whitlow alone, and she asked everyone present to leave the living room immediately. At that moment, she put her cup on a saucer for me. But at that moment, he said that he could not leave the premises and leave the bride alone with her mother. The young man said that he got married without telling his parents anything. Is he really not going to make concessions? Kay confirmed that it was his fault. But how can he leave his wife when she simply calls her Lady Whitlow? Iris's face became surprised. At that moment, I put my hand on the girl's hands. At that moment, the mother screamed. Could he really sell Rudnick? Her father quickly put his hand on her arm. He tried to calm her down. The father said that Kay's words made sense. And it's better to listen to them all together. The mother was surprised by this father's behavior, and she turned her gaze to him. The mother told her future daughter-in-law. What she is about to say may upset her. Therefore, she apologized in advance for her words. At this moment, the girl turned to Countess Green. She asked to be called not Lady Whitlow, but simply Iris or Airy. The girl said that glue parents can feel at home. The girl had a soft but decisive character. A gentle atmosphere surrounded her, but her eyes were alive. According to her mother, her growing up was not calmer. Mother said okay, and she asked the question of how Iris met her son. At that moment, the girl said that she went to Earl Green and was the first to propose to him. Kay didn't expect the girl to say that. I tried to stop her, but the words had already been spoken. The father asked if he could find out the reason for this action. O forced her to take such a decisive step. After all, it is customary for a man to propose to a girl and not vice versa. Without hiding anything, the girl said that she just wanted to escape. She just wanted to escape the duchy. Whitlow. And she remembered her years, which she spent in Hertz constantly. The girl screamed loudly and asked someone to help her. The girl's hair was on fire, and here she was running at high speed along the corridor and asking someone to help her. Because she was running, the fire only flared up. At that moment, someone poured a bucket of water on her. The girl immediately stopped in the middle of the corridor. She cried. And the man who poured the bucket of water ran towards her. He asked if everything was okay with her. The young man ran up and threw a towel over her head. He asked how this could happen, and he was ready to deal with it. The man who helped them was named Gower. He tried to calm her from his eyes. A little further away from them stood two maids as well as her sister Britney, who was holding a candle. She looked at Iris and put her finger to her lips. She shouldn't tell anyone anything about what happened. Iris decided not to give her sister away. She said it was okay and hugged the man tightly. Guger understood everything without words. The girl said it was nothing to worry about. She has already come from you and everything is fine with her. Iris decided that she would deal with her sister herself. They met in the stable area. Iris approached Britney and asked her to stop. She asked what she did wrong. Britney just grinned. She still wonders what she did wrong. Britney said that Iris was the maid's child out of wedlock. She apparently does not know her place and even dares to take what belongs to her. Iris was surprised how she could say such a thing, but Shaving was not very angry. She told her that if it weren't for her. At that moment, Britney pushed her sister. She asked her to disappear. I didn't want to see her again. Iris fell to the ground. Falling to the ground, the girl stained her dress, face, and hair. Britney just laughed. She said this look suits her much better. And she also said that this is where she belongs. Iris didn't answer. She searched for the strength to get up. She looked after her sister. Is it really possible to be so harsh? The girl came to the stable door and said that now she would stay here for a while. Girls need to learn their lesson well. The doors slammed shut. Iris screamed no, but nothing could be done. She found herself locked in the stable. The girl looked out through a crack in the wall. Enough time has already passed. And the girl continued to ask her sister to open the door. It was already night outside, but absolutely no one came to the door. She was locked and sat in a dirty barn for several days. After this incident, she became afraid of narrow and dark rooms. The Duke and Duchess beat her constantly. Her parents listened to her story and were stunned. How much this girl had to endure. Iris said she was constantly despised. She was constantly ridiculed. She had to work as a maid. And even the maids didn't treat her like a lady. They couldn't keep such things a secret forever. And her story sometimes leaked outside the house. But in the end, those who told her story and those who heard her died, spreading only false rumors. Without exception, those in the room were dumbfounded. Iris said, and that the Duke always cherishes his youngest daughter. And it was called the Duke of Whitlow's flower. The Duke planned to give it to the Viscount now in exchange for the gold mine. That is why she went to Count Green. This story even grabbed the heart of the Count's mother. The mother thought, and the girl was very smart. She began her story of a story that will definitely not leave her indifferent. The girl looked calm but was clearly scared. So there is no lie in what she said. And now the parents had no need to reject an intelligent and pathetic person. But the parents asked why the choice fell on Kay. Iris? You were just about to answer this question when Kay interrupted her. He said he wrote letters and sent them to Iris. He asked her to hide the Duke of Whitlow's weaknesses. He needed information about their home and also wanted to communicate with the Whitlow flower. His parents must not be allowed to know that Aerie is aware of his weakness. This will only complicate things. At this moment, the father turned to his wife. He said that not everything she said was credible. However, there is one thing that the father would like to ask the girl. And he asked her a question. Is it really better here than in the duchy? Iris fingered her fingers. Iris said yes, it's very nice here. She had never been so happy before. The father said that this girl is smart and beautiful. She and her father left the living room. The father said that the girl is not just beautiful. Her eyes burn with the desire to live. The mother added that it was a pity that they did not have such a daughter. After all, Henrietta was very aggressive. The father said that since she married their son, she became their daughter. The mother said that when he said that, it really seemed to her that they had a lovely youngest daughter. It would be nice if she didn't suffer anymore. On the territory of the duchy, there was already a horse-drawn carriage. The butler wished Britney a good trip. She was sitting in the carriage thinking about something. Most likely, she was going to the wedding of Count and Countess Green. The girl, looking out the window, grinned evilly. The events took place in the county. It rained very heavily that night. Iris slept in bed with Kay. She was tormented by nightmares. She asked to shave, not to forgive her. She said she was wrong. She asked someone to save her. She simply begged for someone to save her. And at that time, she opened her eyes and gasped. Lightning sounded outside and illuminated the entire room. And the girl screamed throughout the room. This scream woke me up. He jumped out of bed and asked what happened. Iris couldn't say anything, but she was very upset. Count Green asked if she had had a nightmare again. He told the girl that everything was fine and he was nearby. Kay quickly put his arm around the girl's shoulders. 3 days ago, Shave did not announce that she would visit the mansion. Iris has nightmares from that very moment, after her husband found out about how Britney communicated with her. I didn't expect that just the news of her visit would cause so much pain. Iris asked her husband for forgiveness because she was disturbing his sleep. Kay said she had no need to apologize. Everything is fine, and it doesn't bother him. Iris asked her husband for forgiveness for not telling him that she was an illegitimate child. The Count said there was nothing wrong with that. After all, in fact, he assumed this. He kept thinking, what is the reason for all this bullying of such a beautiful, sweet girl? But she didn't ask her so as not to open old wounds. And then she was worried. But she really thought about how she could make sure that her wife didn't suffer. Kay asked if Iris had any ideas. The girl thought about it. After thinking a little, she said that it would be good if he turned into a wolf and protected her. Kay said that I'm his wife. She really wants this. There's nothing to be done. He will definitely do it. And now his clothes fell to the floor. Kay said that if he turns into a wolf, there will be a lot of fur on the bed. The girl said nothing, and she quickly hugged the wolf. Kay said he had a gift for her. Iris was very surprised. The young man said that among the relics there was a protective stone, and he asked Iris if she knew about him. The girl said no. It just seemed like it would be a good reaction to the gift. Kay said that this stone should not be touched. The stone was blue. He made flashes of light to himself that scattered throughout the room. This is a stone that, when handled correctly, sends a good dream. But if it is used incorrectly, it can plunge a person into eternal sleep. This relic beckons those who want to remain in a dream, to escape from reality. There are several unregistered relics in the Sacred Kingdom. For now, they have identified the places of those whom they do not need to touch and left them. After all, they are not yet strong enough to control all the artifacts. Another stone shouldn't be a problem. And if Iris wishes, her husband will bring it. You said that he could suppress its power several times to rid her of nightmares. And the girl said that she was fine. She doesn't want to hide in dreams, and she's sure she won't abuse it. But will everything be fine if the stone falls into the hands of Kay? Over the next 3 years, Kay and Jen's parents will die. Kay's younger brother, Eldhart, could not stand it, and will begin to secretly use the stone. Over time, he will become addicted and hide from the real world in his dreams. Kay will unsuccessfully try to wake him up by all means. He will be alive thanks to his subordinates, but like an empty shell. She just can't let this happen because of her. And the wolf asked the girl, "Does she want this?" He was confident that he could handle everything. But if his wife is very worried about him, that is, there are other ways. The one who does so much for her. The girl said no. She asked to bring this stone to her, and she hugged the wolf tightly. The girl decided that she needed to break this damned stone with her own hands at any cost. Several days passed. Someone commanded that they were ready. Kay told Iris to follow him and look carefully at his feet. They were walking along the road. She was so captivated by this stone that she completely forgot that her husband wanted to show other ways. After walking a little, Ars said that they were there now, and Iris looked carefully at the place where they came. The girl simply gasped in surprise. It was very beautiful. It was a house among the mountains. I heard a large number of horses, and they walked along the road closer and closer to home. Kay asked his wife if she liked this place. He said that what he prepared is not here. They approached a stable where there were many luxurious horses. He greeted them, and he was very glad that the lady and master had finally come to him. Eugene greeted them, and next to him stood a snow-white horse. The snow-white horse had doom on its forehead. Is this really a unicorn? The girl was simply stunned. Kay put her finger to her lips and said that this would be their secret, and she doesn't need to tell anyone about it. The girl was also surprised that the horse's mother did not have a horn. Kay explained that horses can make the horn invisible when they reach maturity. This is the result of evolution for the sake of survival. Although they are invisible, they are tangible. They are also smart enough to understand what a person says. They are loyal to their owner, and when mature, they can even fly. Iris leaned down next to the horses and asked what their names were. The horse's mother's name was White. Iris petted the horse and greeted it, but her child apparently began to be jealous, because the girl was petting the big horse first, and the cub snorted. The girl understood everything and also said hello with a little horse. She was very pleased to meet them. The girl asked Kay what the foal's name was. To this, Kay said that she herself would need to give him a name. The girl did not expect such a turn of events. Does she really have the right to name a unicorn? Kay said that this was his gift for her, and now he is hers. In fact, the foal was quite naughty. He thought that this might be too much for the first experience of parenting, but for now, she would be careful not to harm herself. Kay believed that she could handle him. At this moment, Iris thanked Kai. She said she would raise him diligently, and he will do his best. The events took place in the duchy. Someone hit the table very hard with their fist. Have all his family members gone crazy? Doesn't anyone think to stop this? The man sat from his desk and furiously crumpled up a piece of paper. This marriage simply cannot be allowed. The man was ready to destroy it. But first, he needs to get out of here. At this time, at the stable, Iris began raising the foal. She asked him not to go there, but he obediently ran wherever he wanted. Iris asked the foal to eat a carrot, but as soon as he took a bite, he quickly spat it out. After that, she ran after the foal and fell to the ground. She asked him to listen to her at least a little, but all attempts were unsuccessful. The girl was already practically exhausted. It was much more difficult than she imagined. And now she fell without strength onto the drain with the straw. It was very difficult for her to teach the foal anything. Before the girl began training the foal, Nathan gave her a lot of practical advice. But who thought that everything would be like this? He didn't listen to her at all. Well, what a cutie he was. Iris looked closely into his eyes. She held out her hand to him and told him that she would not harm him. But the foal shook his head proudly and was not ready to agree to his persuasion. Kay stood and watched this picture. It was clear to him that Iris was very difficult to cope with, and he decided to approach her. Iris lay exhausted on the straw. He walked up to her, picked her up by the hands, and looked her straight in the eyes. The girl did not understand what he wanted to do. Kay kissed her passionately on the lips. The girl did not expect such an act at all. She asked what was the matter. Kay asked why he didn't expect such an act. It seemed to Iris that there was a baby next to them. Kay turned his gaze to the baby and smiled. After this act, the baby's gaze became somehow strange. You approached the baby and looked carefully at his eyes. Is it really all because a child is looking at them? Kay kissed Iris passionately again. Kay said that if she didn't like kissing in front of the foal, then why don't they leave the stable? Kay said he was also part beast. To be honest, when he sees Iris together as a foal, he feels a little strange. Iris was shocked. What is he saying? The events took place in the county. Iris was sitting on the living room sofa. She had been so excited since the morning. After all, Kay said that he would bring a stone and immediately left. She said she would be back before the wedding, and so that she gains strength until he returns. Kay's parents entered the living room. They said she came very early. The girl quickly greeted her parents. The girl asked her parents how their morning went. The parents said they felt great and the morning went well. Mom said that the youngest is always the most polite. What did she mean by these words? The parents said that they heard from Kay that he gave his future wife a unicorn. The girl said that everything was correct. She tried to visit him this morning, but he doesn't listen to her and is very difficult to tame. Mom asked how about giving him a name initially. Iris thought about it. Indeed, she didn't come up with a name for him. Mother said that when you give any animal a name, you become closer to this creature. And she asked if there were any suitable names for him. Iris thought about it, and she imagined a baby flying on snow-white wings. At that moment, a suitable name for the baby immediately appeared in the girl's head. She will call him Windy. My father said that this name sounded very good. The mother also confirmed and said that it was a very cute name for a unicorn. The cop's parents said that, in fact, there was another reason why they wanted to see each other today. Within 2 days, someone from the Duchy of Whitlow will arrive. How should they treat the Duke and Duchess? Most likely they are very interested in how she is doing in the county. In any case, there will be a reason for gossip. And the girl quickly clutched her dress with her hands. After some thought, Iris decided that they could treat the Duke and Duchess as they saw fit. The mother asked if she was sure about this. The girl said, and I should be at enmity with the Duke and Duchess only because of her. She can take care of herself. And now Britney's younger sister arrived in the county. She was stunned by the news that she could not enter the palace. Britney's escort shouted whether they had been told that they would arrive. The butler said everything was correct. And the count warned him. Well, the countess is very busy with other things today, so she cannot receive guests. And Jamie asked them to go home. Well, Britney's escort didn't give up. And he said that if the guests have already crossed the main gate, at least they are obliged to accommodate them. Is it really true that when the count's family visits him, they also stand in front of the door? Britney screamed that it was just some kind of shame. The butler kindly apologized and said that they had not yet prepared the guest room. This can happen if they arrive earlier than agreed. The woman said that Iris couldn't do that to them. The guests demanded that the butler talk to Iris again. If he tells her that they have arrived, then she will definitely let them in. At this moment, the Duke shouted enough. He didn't understand how this count's dog dared to insult them like that. His fists were shaking. While running away, the man said that they would return tomorrow. Britney, hugging her mother, didn't understand if her sister had gone completely crazy there. The butler said that the countess was not feeling well today. Well, Britney was sure that as soon as she entered, she would correct her manner. The butler found some excuse every day. That the countess is busy with other things. He came up with a reason every day why guests couldn't get into the county. A few days later, he said that Countess Green was missing. The butler told the countess that her relatives had come again. So I asked her what to do this time. Iris sat at the table and thought. The girl asked the guests to be at the main entrance. Jamie confirmed this. Everything was right. A week has already passed since her husband left. Well, there was no news. Jen also said that she was going for 2 days. The butler asked if the countess thought that they would definitely go back today. Because she knew her family well. She said they weren't going anywhere. They are too proud to leave without everything. But before Jean arrives, the Duke of Whitlow will need to be taught manners. The butler said it would be great to teach them a few lessons. And now the Whitlow family was sitting in the living room. Britney didn't realize how many hours they had been sitting here. They barely made it inside. If this continues, then it will make no difference whether they are outdoors or indoors. Britney was indignant. Should they really stay here with this attitude? They weren't even served a cup of tea or offered food. These counts do not have the slightest hospitality. At that moment, someone coughed, and the family turned their gaze to the door. A butler appeared in the villages. He turned to the Duke and said that the Countess asked to wait a little longer. The Duke screamed. He asked if the butler knew how many hours they had been sitting here. Britney tried to calm her father down and asked him to let her talk to him. Britney asked if Iris had ordered them to behave this way. The butler didn't understand what she meant. Britney once again repeated whether it was the Countess who ordered them to treat their family this way. The butler said no way. The butler was ordered to escort them respectfully. Does the butler really think that such relationships are the norm? The butler said it depends on who is visiting the estate. Britney was surprised, and the butler just smiled kindly. Considering what the Whitlow family did to their Countess, the butler thought it was very respectful. Britney looked at the butler in surprise. Do they really already know everything? She couldn't even imagine this. The Duke jumped up from his seat. What is he talking about? What nonsense this butler is talking about. The Duchess tried to stop her husband. She said Iris lied to them again. Everything was right. It's just some kind of misunderstanding. They could always lie a little, but they won't be so strict with her. The girl said that this was not happening on purpose. In fact, Iris did not want to marry Earl Green. It was he who forced her to do this. After that, the shave didn't quickly cover her mouth with her hand. She asked the butler for forgiveness. After all, she is now talking about his master. Well, the butler said that this was the first time he had heard about it. For Iris, these words were not news, so she immediately told everything. It is also possible that they will say that she is a pathological liar. The butler asked how he should react to these words. The girl told the butler to just pretend to believe everything they say, and she asked the butler to show them the guest part of the house. Will they really agree to stay in the guest room in half the house? The girl said of course not. They will try in every possible way to find her, and they will take advantage of it. The butler said that first of all, he would show the Duke's family the western part of the house. It is in this wing of the estate that the guest rooms are located. And he pointed to the door so that the family would follow him. At this moment, the Duke shouted no. He said he had to meet Iris immediately, and it's a great decision to do it right now. And he quickly ran down the corridor. The whole family ran after him. The butler stood and could not believe his eyes. It's a pity that the palace told someone to leave them alone. Well, he was very sorry that he couldn't see it in person. And so the Duke's family ran to the door. 2 courtiers stood on the threshold. The Count asked, "Is this Iris's room?" One of the men said that this was indeed the Countess's room, but he can never go there without permission. The courtier put out her hand as if protecting the Duke. He asked if the courtiers knew who he was. After all, he came to meet his daughter. To this, the man replied that Countess Green was currently busy with other matters. Therefore, she cannot accept anyone. The face became fierce. What is it? All they hear is that the Countess has other things to do. How many days have they been hearing that the Countess is busy? He shouted out what the Countess could possibly be doing. The courtiers were very surprised by the Duke's behavior. At this point, Britney said that her father could not talk like that. Britney asked if Count Green might be beating up their Iris. She may be avoiding them because of the bruises on her face. The young man was indignant. What is she saying? At that moment, the maid looked out of the door. The girl said that the Countess asked her to find out what was the matter. It's very noisy outside. The Count shouted Iris's name. He said he couldn't do this anymore. Game tried to push the men away and make his way into the room, but the men quickly threw him away and he flew down the corridor. Seguin and his daughter quickly ran up to the Duke. They didn't understand how they dared to do this to him. After all, he is Iris's father. Well, the young men were unshakable. One of the men asked Eugene if he heard what the man just said. Is he really saying that he is her father? Britney was surprised if her sister really told her everything. Isn't it a shame that she was treated like a maid? And then she did not feel humiliated. But she's still their little dog. The dog comes when called and lies down when told to lie down. This is the whole essence of a dog. At that moment, Iris came out of the door. She said it was somehow very noisy. The girl asked what was the matter, and what is happening near the door of her room. At this point, the family addressed her by name. The father asked what this all meant. She asked what happened to his appearance. The girl said, moreover, if he comes, you need to notify her about it in advance. But the man asked how many more times it should be repeated. She didn't say that she was very sorry and she rushed to her sister. Britney said she didn't want to get married, but that's how it turned out. At this, Iris became very angry. Most likely Iris really hates the Count. But the girl only smiled sweetly. She turned her back to her family and asked them to come in. And now the whole family was sitting on the sofa. Britney was surprised by the fact that the girl calmly accepted all the words she told her. For the first time, she didn't deny anything. If Iris starts to deny, then her words can be exposed as a lie. The city girl was sitting on a chair, so brave and confident. The Count asked what kind of rude manners in front of elders. Iris asked to understand her rudeness. She said they knew better than her that she wasn't homeschooled. And the girl laughed merrily. At this moment, the girl said that she had completely forgotten to introduce her maids. One of the maids was named Christina and she was from the family. And the second girl is Aruela. Count there were 1,000,000 are such families serving their Iris now. His face was angry. A stone sparkled on the Duke's chest. The girl said that she wrote them a date for a visit. What is the reason for their arrival so early? She didn't think at all that they missed her. The Duke family was surprised. Can't they really worry about her? After all, Count Green suddenly took her away, as if he had kidnapped her. But no news of the wedding was heard. Moreover, many dirty rumors spread. If something had been revealed after the wedding, then… Iris laughed. It was very interesting. It was Britney, knowing that she was in trouble, who provoked and sent Viscount Hutchess here. Is she pretending and worrying about her? The girl was horrified why her sister was saying this now. I'd say she looks like the Iris she knows. If this is all because she is worried about her, then she is also worried about her. Doesn't she want to dare the dishes like she used to? Or maybe Britney doesn't want to be left in the warehouse without food. What about being beaten, but something you didn't do? Now Britney couldn't find the right words. Iris asked if she really thought that the girl would not say this in front of the maids. Otay also looked at his daughter in shock. She looked very similar. She looked very much like her mother, who was then clutching the baby to her chest. She screamed that she would definitely kill him, Globin Whitlow. Iris asked all three to listen to her carefully. Do they really want to make her a liar now? They can do this as much as they want. But they must remember this. When they try to hurt her again, she will ask the authorities to sever all ties with the Dukedom of Whitlaw. If they want to know the reason, the girl will not be afraid to voice it at all. The family will no longer be able to hide it like before, because now there are a lot of people who know the truth. As Iris left, she turned around. She said that's not all. Now Iris Green has the strength to do it. And the girl proudly turned away. At that moment, Britney ran up to her father. What should they do now? Is he really going to ignore this? I sat on a chair and thought. He really didn't want to admit the fact that his daughter Iris was already out of their control. For the sake of their family's future, he must maintain contact with the Green family. It will be more convenient to maintain good relations with them. And the father said that this time they would retreat. Britney is hysterical. The father told Britney that he was not saying at all that they were returning home. But this time, she needs to listen to his father. All just for the sake of her future. The butler informed Iris that her family planned to stay here until the wedding. Iris assumed so. The imperial family will also send someone to the wedding, so they want to make a good impression. Let's see how well they play the role of family. At that moment, the girl turned to Jamie and asked if Kay was coming tomorrow. Everything was right, and now everything will be different. Two people who were lovers in a past life meet again. She knew that this affair was a contract and out of necessity. For Britney, it was a wonderful trophy. Kay, who lost his family, needed the Empress's strength. But how will everything be in this life? Iris was ready to protect everyone so that Kay would not need Britney. The events took place in Iris's room. The girl was lying on the bed and sleeping. At that moment, she started screaming again. Help! She moaned and sighed in her sleep. At that moment, the window opened. Kay appeared at the window. He said enough. He ran all night to see her as quickly as possible, but she's still having a nightmare. He was very sorry. He looked carefully at his wife. He felt a little sorry for her. At that moment, he extended his hand to the girl. He started shaking her to wake her up. But at that moment, her hand grabbed his hand. The young man was a little upset. He wished her good night and kissed her tenderly. He decided that he would greet her when she woke up. She was very cute when she slept. And then morning came, the girl sat up on the bed and began to stretch. Thanks to this dream, the girl felt that she really got enough sleep today. Well, what a surprise she was when she saw Kay next to her. Her face became surprised. She asked her a question when he arrived. Kay and wished good morning to his wife. She asked why he didn't wake her up. Kay just didn't want to disturb her sleep. He quickly kissed her on the cheek and asked what good things she dreamed about today. And at that moment, the girl realized that he was using a stone. Let it seem to her that this is the basis of a nightmare, but it dissipated when Kay came to sleep. The girl said that she had a very good dream today. She hadn't had such good dreams for a long time. Earl Green was very happy that everything worked. Exactly. Kay named them Sergi Tissy. She has not brought good luck yet, but maybe she will be lucky in this life. At that moment, the young man saw that the girl was thinking about something, and he asked her what she was thinking about. The girl said that she was thinking about her dream. The young man was very interested in what she dreamed about in this dream. After thinking a little, Iris said that she was dreaming. Windy, her new child. She couldn't say that it was Kay she was dreaming about. After all, it really embarrassed her. Kay was surprised to hear that his wife was dreaming of a foal. Does she really think about Wendy when she has such a handsome husband next to her? The girl said that he himself asked the content of the dream. Kay really hoped that in the dream it was he who came to her, and he quickly pressed himself close to his wife. This was very different from Kay in the dream. The girl didn't even imagine that he could behave like a puppy, but at that moment, one thought arose in the girl's head. Now she is in reality or not? What if she died and remained in a dream? And she looked carefully into her husband's eyes. What if this is really a dream? And she started touching her husband. Kay asked to stop. He told her that if she touched him like that in the morning, he wouldn't be able to hold back. The girl quickly removed her hands. She apologized at the same time. Kay looked at her carefully. After that, with a sharp movement, he laid her on the bed. He said he didn't need to apologize if he didn't have to hold back. Everything was real. In his hearts, he might even eat her. And she kissed her passionately again. Every time she heard his voice, everything inside her turned upside down. It was hard, but not scary at all. Kay leaned on her with his whole body. She wanted to know how passionate he could be, how passionate his eyes can be. And she also started kissing him. They could only pause for a second to catch their breath. After that, Kay pulled away from her lips and turned away. He grabbed his head and said that if she did it again, it was difficult for him to contain himself. But this feeling simply took over him. He picked the girl up from the bed. Kay sat Iris in his arms and said that he didn't know if he could restrain himself.